Cool Figure TV. Revolutionary salute. Revolutionary salute. Like, share, subscribe. Welcome to the House of Revolution. You know I'm your humble host, the Yao-Mean of Revolution. And P. Diddy got some good news and he got some bad news. Before we get into that, be sure to wipe your feet. That means hit the like button. Like, share, subscribe, support the platform, y'all. Well, P. Diddy, he got some good news and he got some bad news. But we're going to get into all the news. Salute, family, the hardest working revolutionary in the business is back today, back at it. When I seen this, I knew we had to discuss it. Will P. Diddy be getting a mistrial? We got to start off with that. Everything might be thrown out because of what happened with them seizing some illegal information. Let's start with that.
Well, I was preparing a recap of the government's opposition to Diddy's most recent motion for bail. This just dropped, a letter from Diddy's attorneys. And if it's true, this is bad news for the prosecution and potentially the trial. Welcome to Popcorn Planet. I am Andy Signor. We got a lot of updates for you today. Make sure you hit that subscribe if you haven't already. And yes, there's big news in that the government's opposition to Diddy's most recent bail attempt is shocking. There's a lot of allegations in here, and we're going to go through that. In fact, I'm going to make that part 2 of this video, along with some legal analysis, because there's a lot of stuff redacted. There's a lot of accusations. Look at that. So many things blacked out. There's a lot of look at all this. But there's one thing in particular that Diddy's team is pointing out. And they're talking about it right here. The fact that they are using materials that may include possibly privileged materials. That's point 4 they're talking about up here, where they talked about while in custody, investigators recovered the following notes from defendant's cell during a pre-planned nationwide sweep of the facilities. I guess that was to try to get Diddy's information. So now here's what Diddy's responding. I want to start here because this is breaking and this is bad. If they screwed up and this is real, this is bad. And I'll explain why. So here's what the letter to the judge says. This is Diddy's team. Defense counsel has recently learned that prosecutors are in possession of attorney-client privilege material.
Now, if it's true that when a jail sweep happened, a pre-planned jail sweep, somebody took information they wasn't supposed to take, I absolutely believe that Diddy had this done on purpose to taint his case. I mean, he and Diddy is having a lot of power in this jail, unbelievable amount of power. Having all them suckers in there doing whatever Diddy say, police officers. You see, money make people do strange shit, thinking they gonna get a little donation in their funds. I'm just talking about inmates, I'm talking about jailhouse staff, everybody, nurses. Thinking about it might be able to retire onto an island somewhere if they just do what Diddy say. So this phone call thing that we're going to be hearing about later, how Diddy was getting extra phone calls and using other people's phone. Diddy ain't in the cell by himself. You mean Diddy's in the cell with other high profile? Yes, that's the only way you can use people's phone calls. What the hell is going on in this federal? This shit is getting strange by the minute. But like I say, if this is true, and somehow they got information, privileged information that Diddy was going to use to defend himself, which this is a setup, this is a conspiracy, used to taint the case. He absolutely probably paid them dirty motherfuckers to do it.
Material, including the defendant's own written notes. This search and seizure are in violation of Mr. Combs' 4th, 5th, and 6th Amendment rights. Moreover, the targeted seizure of a pretrial detainee's work product and privileged materials created in preparation for trial is outrageous government conduct amounting to a substantive due process violation. Because the prosecutors are currently in possession of privileged material and are actively using this material to detain the defendant, the defense rests an immediate evidentiary hearing. This is an emergent matter because the government has Mr. Combs' privileged notes to his lawyers concerning defense witnesses and defense strategies. Government's opposition to defendant's bail motion states that the trial prosecutors are currently in possession of possibly privileged materials, I just read that, such as notes recovered from the cell. In fact, the government is in possession of written material that is absolutely privileged. This is a matter of grave concern that...
Come on, bro. Everybody and their mama know you can't touch legal documents. That's one of the things officers in jails know. when they search, do not touch the legal documents. They know that because they don't want to taint them cases, get a case thrown out by tampering with them legal documents. They know that's a no-no. And then when you got a case like P. Diddy, who would be dumb enough to take the man legal documents and somebody who done been paid off on the outside to throw this case?
Most respectable.
Oh, shoot. Excuse me, y'all.
Well, I was some explanation. You got to remember the way these things work is they have apparently filtered teams where teams gather and they're able to sort of separate and give the non-privileged information to the investigating authorities while the other stuff remains behind closed. But I mean, that's just hard to not think that someone couldn't just be like, what does that say over there? Cool. Don't tell anybody I looked. That would be corruption. That would be awful, but that's what's happening. Now, the reason this is just scary is because they're making good points here. They're asking good questions. This looks shady. Now, look, I'm not a Diddy fan. I'm not trying to defend Diddy, but I've said all along, I want to make sure we get a fair trial, because if we don't, that's how he gets out, folks. And this is exactly how he gets out. This absolutely could cause a mistrial later, that this wasn't a fair trial. All of this is really bad news if, in fact, they were able to use notes that Diddy was making, client notes. It's just massively bad news. And yeah, as Christopher just told me, the court could block the government from using any evidence it obtained from the search of his cell, which will make it easier for him to get out on bail. The court could also disqualify the prosecution team and make them pick new members. This is bad if actually true. Now, they're going to try to deny it. I have no doubt. Now, maybe there is excuses as to what happened here, but this filing is no joke. This is no joke. And it will, like, as I'm being told, and we're going to bring on our lawyers. I'm going to get one of our lawyer panels together later this afternoon to go through what this means, along with going through the shocking revelations in this, which I don't want to keep spoiling it. I mean, teasing it. But in this, there's examples of him apparently still intimidating witnesses, using other cellmates' phones to reach said witnesses. There's evidence.
That threw me off. Using other inmates' phones. They got Diddy in the jail with other people, man. Diddy is running the prison. This is crazy, man. Diddy is the boss of these. I told y'all, man, it's a new day. People will do anything for money. Flunk everybody in there. They don't give a damn about no children being touched on. They don't get the women being. They don't give a damn about none of that. Diddy putting money on people's books, like what happened in prison. This is crazy. What's going on in that federal prison, man? This is exposing everything.
Evidence in this filing from the government that he was using his family to make that Instagram post, which we assumed already in our reporting here. There is some awful stuff in here that reaffirms why he is being detained, that he's breaking the rules in prison to get around them, that he's manipulating his own family to try to taint the jury pool. A lot of stuff that they've been worried about is still happening while he's behind bars. And that's why they're saying, you know what? No, you can't, you have to deny his motion for bail. And this is why he's being detained. But to see this reply, I'm always going to keep it fair and honest. This is troubling to read, extremely troubling to read, that they are potentially doing. Now, hopefully they'll have an explanation and that what the court will be able to accept. But they make a very good argument here. They're asking very good questions. Will we be able to get fair answers? And this is where things are going to start getting wonky, where people are going to, Diddy defenders, which exist, they were out to get him. He can't get a free trial. He never had a free trial. They had him all day long. Oh yeah, they were filtering things. Sure, like they weren't sharing information.
And that's the problem, bro. That's the problem. No matter how disgusting, you see, that's what America. No matter how disgusting this dude is, no matter what he done allegedly did, he supposed to get a fair trial so the conviction stick. All this BS that's going on, man. And all this is making it possible to get this bullshit thrown off, or he gonna have all kind of different trials. They taint it, or they gonna say, hey, this is just too much. Just get a man 10 years. He's sat in there 2 years. I'm telling you right now, they're trying to say this is BS. For whoever took these legal documents up out his cell, gave this man action to get out of prison, man.
got caught doing it. They denied it, blah, 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 blah. Oh, yeah, sure. That department had it and this department didn't. This is going to create a massively theorized and more support for Diddy and potentially help him later get that mistrial or whatever, other things that sort of throws us all out. Could the whole team be removed? A new one comes in. This is wild. And I imagine we're going to hear this pretty quickly. This does feel like an emergency order that's justified to figure out what the heck you're talking about. They have rights. Diddy and his team have rights. And if their due process is being, ignored, and they're literally, we talked about that seizure at the jail. Clearly that was part of it. They used that seizure to check for things, to take his notes. Look, I hate
legal, bro. They can't give a fuck how you shake down a cell. You can't touch legal documents, bro. They supposed to go around that all day so this don't happen. So whoever did that, they've been bought and paid off to do that just so Diddy have action.
That I have some empathy for this man, but my God, he deserves a chance to prepare his defense. I want him to do that fairly. And if he doesn't get to do that fairly, he could still be guilty, but he's going to get away with it. We have to give him a right to have a fair trial. We have to. Everybody earns that right. We all have to have that right, even criminals. And if they're out there shaking down cells to take his notes, which he's doing to give to his lawyers, and they're sort of catching it before he can meet with his lawyers, I don't like that, man. I don't know about you. I know a lot of you don't like Diddy, but this isn't right if this is true. Now, again, we'll see what their response is, and I'll bring that to you as soon as we have it. Make sure you've hit that subscribe.
All right, salute. Now that was some good news for Diddy. He might have action. Salute. He might have action, but this is also some more good news. We start with the good news because it's gonna get bad for him after this good news. Some more good news for Diddy. Prominent man sues Diddy accuser, the lawyer Tony Busby, alleges extortion. Now this is good for Diddy because if this goes through, it's gonna make a lot of this seem like a shakedown scheme. But the messed up part about this is, one of the judges just said that the witnesses have got to come forward and say who they are, the accusers. But these judges is letting prominent celebrities. This could be one of the big name celebrities. They're suing under anonymous names. This is bullshit. We should know if this is Will Smith or LeBron James or Oprah or Jay-Z or Kevin Hart or Ashton Kutcher or Justin Bieber. We should know which one of these Hollywood people is suing, saying this is extortion. They should not be able to go by an alias. That's bullshit.
A A-list celebrity is now suing Tony Busby, saying you are extorting me. This could be good news for Diddy. I got two of the best lawyers to break it down. Welcome to Popcorn Planet. I am Andy Signor, and what a panel. We got Christopher Melcher and Rais, our beard lawyer here. Both of you, welcome back, both of you guys. Chris, how are you doing? First, let's start with you.
Doing pretty good. Glad to be part of the group here.
Aren't you jealous of that beard? I mean, he's got the best beard in the biz. Rais, good to see you, my man. How are you?
Good, excellent. Good to see you as always.
Look, I want to get right into this because there's a lot to talk about with you both, and I'm glad because I want to get both your instincts. I'm going to shut up. But the big news that just dropped is that a prominent A-lister celebrity guy is suing Tony Busby. And honestly, I can't say I'm surprised at this point. This is obviously the lawyer, 120 cases. He's been mentioning these A-list talent. He's going to come after them. He's been out there. It pretty much felt like a shakedown. It's unclear what they did or what's involved. Now, we've seen certain cases where some of these people were witnessing criminal acts. Unclear which people he was talking about. Either way, this identified as Jane Doe filed his own lawsuit this morning, describing himself as a high-profile individual who knew Diddy, attended events along with the mogul. He's been repped by one of the premier law firms in the country, Quinn Emanuel, which I've been told by Chris is a no-joke law firm. I've heard of them too, but They are very well funded. The man behind it, Tony Busby, and his firm threatened to unleash entirely fabricated and malicious allegations of SA, including multiple incidents of a minor, both male and female, against plaintiff if he refused to comply with their demands. Suit goes on to say that Busby's demand letters alleged the plaintiff are the males and the females while they're under the influence at parties hosted by Diddy. The plaintiff references past lawsuits Busby has filed against other celebrities, including football star Deshaun Watson. The man claims Busby tried to shake down Watson and others by making dubious claims he knew would not stand up in court. The lawsuit obtained by TMZ goes on to say Busby did the same thing to Green Bay Packer Brandon McManus, allegedly threatening to sue him over specious allegations of SA. Suit claims the NFL investigated and found insufficient evidence and closed the case. The new lawsuit by Jane Doe references our documentary, which they go on to talk about, where he does sort of admit in this documentary, yeah, this is how it works. Chris, I want to go to you first. Is this how it works? We've been seeing this a lot where these lawyers are out there basically like, you better buy the tape, you better do it. This is how it is legally, but it has been feeling a little bit of a shakedown to me. What's your reaction to this?
Well, I'm not surprised by it. And there's a fine line between representing a client and going to the alleged perpetrator and saying, hey, we have a claim, please pay us, or we're going to go to court. There's nothing wrong with that, is actually what the law would expect, is you try and work stuff out without going and asking a judge or a jury for help. It's kind of a last resort. So there's nothing wrong with that. However, it crosses the line when the lawyer has not done sufficient due diligence to establish whether these are credible or reliable information, and they're just simply demanding payment in exchange for keeping embarrassing info quiet. That could be the crime of extortion. Now, what kind of caught, I think, all of our ears when Busby was doing the press conference about the 120 people that he was representing that actually sued Diddy and others, or were about to, he kept talking about these celebrities out there who were involved, and they knew who they were and were kind of coming after them, and he never named them. And to me, that was suspect, because again, one thing to send a letter to that target, why do a press conference about it other than to basically show the target, you see what I can do. I have a platform and I will start naming you unless you pay me. And I think that's what got him in trouble.
Race, I want to go to you. I mean, do you share that? I mean, he's out there threatening. It seems like, hey, I'm going to constantly do this. We saw this with Ariel, I remember, on the News Nation clips. We talked about it with both you guys, how she was seeming like, you better buy this tape. It's going to get a thing. It felt very similar. Can lawyers get away with this? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, we don't have all the facts, but I will say this. If this Jane Doe plaintiff, right, is going to Quinn Emanuel to sue and is saying that this is extortion, Tony Busby needs to be concerned, because it's probably not a nothing, right? And let's not forget that Michael Avenatti, you may remember this name, some years ago, is doing 30 months in prison on a charge for trying to extort Nike for $25 million. He ended up ultimately getting charged with a bunch of other financial crimes, right, which got tacked on. The dude is in prison, is my point. So attempting to extort celebrities and high-profile people by saying, we have this, and making things up and attempting to extract money in a shakedown is absolutely extortion. Now, to Chris's point, there is a proper way to do this, which is not extortion, which is to have a valid legal claim, to have it documented, and to bring it out through the due course of litigation. The problem is, right, if I'm Tony Busby's lawyer, I'm saying, dude, you've been on the news quite a bit saying you have this, that, and the other thing, and that people need to pay. And where is that evidence, right? Was this, in fact, a shakedown and an attempt to just get extort money in a gigantic settlement for things that you don't even have proof of, and do it just because P. Diddy is a infamous now celebrity?
Yeah, it's interesting, Chris, because he had that 1-800 number. He's been putting out, 120. We had thousands of people. It almost felt like he was throwing the number out to sort of justify it. Meanwhile, I think he's only done like 10, maybe a dozen actual lawsuits. Could this all been sort of a tactic to try to seem like it was more aggressive to get these sort of offers taken seriously by these celebrities?
Oh, absolutely. And so the thing is that, he's in business, and Busby, if you can go look at his social media, has a very large lifestyle. He has been a successful lawyer. But this guy's got, mansion and jet and all kinds of fancy cars. It's kind of like too much. And so there's a lot there that he needs to support. So he's got to bring in new cases and to keep this thing going. And so there was definitely showmanship happening there. He got a huge amount of attention, assuming he had 120 people there. But like you say, we didn't see 120 lawsuits. So he's definitely trying to drag business, and then, to get some clients to sign up. And then he's going to go after the hotel, or who knows, the baby oil manufacturer, all these other people other than Diddy to extract a settlement from them, because he's not going to see a dime from Diddy until the criminal case is over. The civil case is going to be on hold. And, some viewers, if you're kind of follow this stuff in detail, might be thinking, well, isn't there a privilege to make comments about, a defendant in a lawsuit? Yes, there is. And we can't be sued for what we say in the course of litigation. But remember, here, there is no litigation. Busby did not sue the A-lister, only talked about that person. And it doesn't even seem like a lawsuit necessarily was contemplated or ready to go, because he still hasn't filed it, over a month out from doing that press conference. So I don't think he's going to be protected by the so-called litigation privilege.
Yeah, it's interesting. As I've been covering this, I've seen more and more people feel confident to just throw names out. People allegedly, we've had a few people on, and I've covered myself saying, look, we can't prove it, but I'm kind of not surprised to see somebody finally stand up. Honestly, if it's a lie, they should, and this would be interesting. But the problem with this is it obviously then can negate all the other real actual victims of Diddy, and that's where things are getting intense, because it's not just this now. I got to say, between today's news, it sure does feel like Diddy got a win today in the press, because now, coupled with Busby's sort of reaction, we got this, which we talked about, but it actually has gotten even more serious since our earlier report. Diddy's team is accusing them of outrageous conduct and basically sweeping the jail to get his prison notes, which goes against the client, attorney privilege. As we reported on, if you missed that, check it this morning, you'll get more information about it. But the judge has already responded, saying they have to respond. Basically, they have 20 more minutes by end of day, 5 p.m. today. The court will hold a hearing tomorrow at 3 p.m. We're going to be live. We'll be live actually at 2 p.m. to go through this and more. So I'm going to put it right at the end of this. Stay tuned. We'll be live covering this hearing, but this has got to be a big deal, Reis, like to see that they're now, this was a concern of ours. We taped a video. Sadly, I screwed up. So Reis' first video is lost in the ether, but to share what we talked about or recap it, this is serious. Now, if they were scanning the prison for notes or for items and then took Diddy's legal notes and then used that to keep detaining him in a prison, that's not helping his due process. And that could potentially hurt his opportunity to free trial and could cause a mistrial, no?
Yeah, I think 100% it would be unethical if prosecutors sifted through information and knew that they were in possession of information that was trial preparation material, or even worse, attorney-client privilege communications. And like I said before, if an attorney accidentally emails something and it gets to the other side, it's a known accident, it's an email, it's direct. The receiving lawyer has a duty to actually sequester and destroy it. You shouldn't even read past the first line if you know it's that obvious that it's to the client or to co-counsel. And it happens. You can't use it to then, oppose a motion and say, ha, gotcha, look what you're doing. It's completely unethical. Now, we don't know all of the facts, right? This is happening in somewhat of a vacuum, but the judge is obviously taking it seriously, because ahead of a hearing that was for Friday, setting a hearing tomorrow. So it is absolutely serious, and or setting a hearing today, rather. So it is extremely important that we flesh this out. And if in fact there was misconduct, I think the judge is going to come down extremely hard.
Yeah, I mean, what's frustrating is obviously how this can affect the truth from coming out. And so that's what I'm worried, because as we talked about, Reese, also earlier, sort of the fact that he was trying to influence witness testimony, taint the jury. We went through a lot of examples, and we're going to go through it tomorrow during the live. But the short version of it, he was using prisoners' pack numbers to sort of go against the monitoring system. He was paying them off through the commissary to get their numbers, get their calls, through these third-party calls. Now, Chris, we were talking before the stream. This doesn't show what kind of calls he was doing. Doesn't show he was doing any criminal or other things like actually tampering with witnesses, but it shows he's breaking a lot of these rules. It also revealed that he was using his children to post those things on Instagram, which was just sort of disgusting to see. All these kids, this birthday video was complete manipulation, where he was on with them the next day asking about how the viewership did and all the data to ensure we could taint the jury pool, according to this document. So, I mean, Chris, is there a version of all this stuff which is problematic, which is also part of the reason he's still detained? But could all of this sort of blow up in the face of, look, he's not getting a fair trial? Sure, he's also sneaky and he's doing stuff. But is there a version where maybe Diddy's doing all this on purpose, like leaving notes out for the prison officers to find, potentially, you know, telling his celebrity friend to sue Busby to try to curry favor and twist this story from a PR standpoint more to his favor? What do you think's going on?
Well, I think the government kind of fell into its own trap. Look, I mean, violating the rules of detention there, in using somebody else's account to make a phone call, you know, okay, fine. Maybe there's some, you know, consequences around that, but that's not a reason to hold him in pretrial detention. So they're really going to need to connect this with witness intimidation, you know, threats to a witness. They're really going to have to go there, in my mind, to make this relevant. Because remember, what was supposed to happen is that Diddy was going to go to New York, which he did, to voluntarily surrender himself to be booked on the indictment. And then the feds swooped in the night before, grabbed him out of his hotel room and threw him in jail. And there he has sat ever since. And we knew when that happened, it must have been like something he was either going to take off or he was threatening witnesses. So they said, yeah, he was trying to threaten witnesses. That's why we needed to hold him. So now they're facing now this third bail hearing where he's trying to get out, which most people have the right to do, by the way. And they're saying, hey, we found some evidence that he's still threatening people. And if true, that would be a great reason to hold him. But now they went in and did a search of his cell, and it would be foreseeable to the investigators and prosecutor that Diddy would have attorney-client communications, like letters to or from his lawyer in his cell, or notes to himself about trial preparation, which he has a right to remain silent, and they don't get to see that. So to go in there and search that stuff, they're going to most likely encounter privileged information. So what they needed to do was have kind of sanitized search team, a group of investigators or prosecutors who are not involved in the prosecution of this particular matter, look at the stuff, or maybe have a magistrate or special master go in and filter that so that only the non-privileged information that actually showed some level of guilt here for the violation of prison rules or threatening of witnesses made it into the hands of the investigators or prosecutors who are handling this case. If they took that step, they should be fine. If they didn't, I would imagine, and this is why this court got excited about these questions, is saying you need to answer them today, government, because if they did go and violate this guy's rights, then I got to think that they're going to be precluded from probably using any of this evidence about using code words and other people's phones at the bail hearing. That'll be at least at minimum the remedy, potentially all the way up to disqualification of the prosecution team to replace them out, or even as much, if it's serious enough, dismissing the case, cite Alec Baldwin.
Ray's thoughts. Do you agree? Do you think this could lead to that?
I think it's a severe punishment. And if in fact it's the case that prosecutors knew what they were holding could incriminate this defendant, and it was in his jail cell, and they knew exactly what it was when they got it, which it seems like they should, I really do think the judge is going to come down pretty hard on them. I mean, it's an emergency hearing. It's being taken seriously. And again, I think Chris is right. I don't think that this means that, pun intended, it's a get out of jail free card, right? I mean, I don't think the judge is going to look at this and say, P. Diddy, sayonara, have a great Thanksgiving, and you can go back home to your family. But also there's another fight in tandem, which is, you know, P. Diddy trying to control the optics of what a jury is going to see through social media and his family, which again, we knew he was trying to do that back when the allegations of him assaulting Cassie came out. Remember, because he had the picture of him and his baby. All of a sudden on social media, there's no baby pictures and there's baby pictures. And so he's not a dumb guy from a PR standpoint. But all in all, right, on the whole, this doesn't mean that he's getting out. And I think whatever happens at this hearing very, very soon, the judge is going to take it very seriously, and somebody's probably going to get slapped.
Well, as we're taping, this just came in, which was Busby has responded. We're going to end with this. He says he's fighting back strong. He won't be intimidated, nor will his clients. He says, here's the quote. He won't be back down. We won't allow this powerful and high-dollar lawyers to intimidate or silence SA survivors. Busby's lawsuit says the firm is not only without merit, but also laughable. He goes on even further to say the suit is an abuse of the legal system. He tells us he sent a standard demand letter to New York to a New York lawyer known to represent the individual in question, seeking a confidential settlement on behalf of 2 clients instead of a lawsuit. He says no dollar figures were included in the demand letters and no threats were made, contrary to the allegations in the suit against him. Busby got testy. I'm a U.S. Marine. I won't be silenced or intimidated. Neither will my clients. Quickly, Chris, just because we're wrapping it up. Do you think that's a good response? What do you think?
Well, yeah, sure. It's all going to come out. It's going to come out if threats were made, like Grace mentioned about the Nike thing. They recorded, Avenatti, and Mark Garagos was actually present at that meeting. They recorded it. So if Quinn Emanuel thought they were being shaken down, they go to the FBI and they tape record it, and that might have happened. We'll see.
Right, and Quinn Emanuel race is no joke. They're keeping tabs and wouldn't have this if they didn't know better.
Yeah. Look,
so Busby's sweating is what do you think he's actually sweating behind closed doors?
Tony, do I think Tony's sweating behind closed doors? I think any reasonable lawyer getting, a demand or a lawsuit like that would, but we don't know the facts. Like, we don't know all the evidence, right? So right now what we're seeing is a lot of splashes in the public's eye. As lawyers, we make decisions on facts, right? What we think a judge or a jury is likely to believe based on a factual presentation. And we don't have all the facts. We have a lot of, PR banter right now, but it's getting extremely heavy, right?
It is getting heavy. Make sure you follow
the best of us can't. What does an investigator do? You see some massive A-lister who's in a gated community. You can't, even the best of us can't get through to them. What happens? What's the actual protocol to kind of, metaphorically knock on that mansion door and let them know what's going on?
Right. So celebrities' whereabouts and contact information is not actually that difficult for a federal agent to access. And so they have to make their best efforts to make direct contact with the individual, because at the end of the day, these are sensitive allegations. They involve sexual assault. They're just like any other Jane Doe. There's a reason why we call them Jane Doe and John Doe in indictments. And so they would want to make direct contact first with that individual to see if it's one thing they believe, that the law enforcement believes that they're victims, but do they believe that they've been victimized? Are they willing to cooperate in this investigation and prosecution? And if they can't get to the celebrity directly, then I think the next best approach, and this is pretty much protocol, is to contact an attorney, an entertainment lawyer, somebody that has attorney-client privilege with the celebrity, as opposed to a manager or an agent where there's, no privileged communications.
Yeah.
But again, I think, it depends on whether they're going to cooperate. And I think in this scenario, there are a lot of people, famous people, that just whether they're victim or suspect want to have nothing to do with Diddy Doomsday.
I can imagine that. Can I also ask you? We're in such a different digital age now, where there's just so much on iPhones. There's so much video evidence in courtrooms now. In a circumstance like this, and again, they might have to go through many layers of, handlers before they could actually get to a celebrity. Because again, even a federal agent isn't just going to knock on some massive A-lister's door, right? But would they bring the video? Would they actually bring it in a handheld device to say, I have terrible news for you, and before you tell me you don't believe it, is this you? Like, would they actually show it at that point? This is such incredibly sensitive material.
Ashley, they never come in with the golden nugget initially. I think, especially when you're dealing with a high-profile individual, the question's going to be, do you believe you were victimized? Would you want to cooperate in this investigation? This is what we would expect from you if you do. And then down the road, of course, they would share information that they have. If they're getting pushback, if they believe the person's denying it and are unwilling.
Well, if the celebrity has no idea, right? We're talking about unconscious people. No. Our grand jury witness told us that they were completely unconscious. So if they have no idea, doesn't it behoove the detective to enlighten them as to what is on the video? And by God, it's you, ma'am. You know what I mean?
Ashley, I know, but Ashley, I have a problem with that premise. I know a lot of people that would get invited to Diddy parties, and they knew what goes on at Diddy parties, whether they were called freak-offs or not. I live in LA, and so I think that when you're dealing with adults, I don't want to say you consent by going to a party to everything that happens at that party, but this is a kind of party where you kind of do, and I think that it's expected that you go to a Diddy party, there's going to be drugs, there's going to be poppers, there's going to be sex, there's going to be crazy sex. So, they might be unconscious in the moment to consent to a particular sexual act, but I don't believe for a minute that they didn't know.
You're the lawyer, but I disagree with you. I'm going to tell you why, and I'm not a lawyer, so this is a joke, but I don't believe that because lots of people go to frat parties where the drinking is wild and crazy, and if someone puts something into a girl's drink and she is molested and raped on video, it doesn't matter what the intention was. It doesn't matter what kind of party she was going to. You can't put your key into a car like that. You know what I mean? And so that's the only reason I'm saying I feel like some of these celebrities might have no idea it was them and this happened.
Yeah, I mean, there might be some in that category, but I'm sure there's many in the category of let's have a good time, let's party, let's do these drugs, let's drink this alcohol and get crazy. There's also that because he definitely had a brand for this,
Yeah. And it's hard, you're right. It's really hard on tape to know what was consensual, but it isn't hard on tape to know if somebody is unconscious. That's the one thing.
Thanks for watching. Go to joinnn.com.
Now to the ongoing federal criminal case against Sean Diddy Combs. Prosecutors in a new court filing saying a judge should deny Combs' latest bail request, accusing the music mogul of, quote, relentless efforts to contact witnesses and orchestrating social media campaigns to taint a potential jury, all while behind bars.
Now, Combs has pleaded not guilty to charges of racketeering, conspiracy, sex trafficking, and transportation to engage in prostitution. And joining us now is ABC News senior investigative correspondent Aaron Katursky and ABC News contributor attorney Brian Buckmeyer. Good to see you both. So, Aaron, what are prosecutors alleging here?
They're alleging that Sean Combs from behind bars is doing two things. One, he is trying to contact people he's not supposed to contact by using the phone accounts of at least 8 other inmates. And when he's on the phone with his family and attorney, those are authorized calls. Prosecutors say he's telling them to get other people on the phone in like a 3-way call, which is not allowed. And on those calls, they say he's trying to set up social media campaigns, trying to get them to make public statements, all aimed at influencing the jury for a springtime trial.
All from behind bars?
All from behind bars. He's dangerous enough, prosecutors say, behind bars. And so the case for keeping them there, prosecutors say, is now even stronger.
Now, we have to point out that Diddy has denied all wrongdoing, and his defense team claims that there is new evidence that undermines the government's case here. Aaron, what are the conditions that his lawyers are asking for this bail?
Well, they say they can provide even better conditions than before. He can stay effectively on house arrest in his $50 million Miami mansion. They can hire a whole phalanx of private security guards. They can limit his visitors, access to who he can talk to. Prosecutors say none of that is going to be sufficient. If he can do all of this from behind bars, what's to stop him if he's actually sitting in his house?
And Brian, Diddy's next bail hearing is set for this Friday. He's been denied twice. So what is his chances right now?
very, very low. And let me explain why. First and foremost, that sex trafficking charge, as Aaron has, I think, articulated many times, is a presumption of incarceration. So you're kind of behind the 8 ball. And then once you've been denied, not once, but multiple times, to go to another judge and say, hey, show that these other judges were wrong, you've got to show some sort of change of circumstances, some sort of additional evidence that really combats the allegations, and also to some extent show that your client has been a model citizen, or at least a model inmate. And a lot of that hasn't been proven yet.
So Brian, we've seen some new allegations against Diddy come forward in the time that he's been behind bars. Could that lead to new criminal charges?
So potentially, but when you think about it, you've got conspiracy, racketeering, and sex trafficking, very serious charges. And then witness tampering, another charge, but not that serious in comparison. I think more so than anything else, these allegations are going to be used to argue why he should not be released on some sort of bail package or what it may be. I don't think the SDNY, and I've been wrong before, and I'll probably be wrong again, is going to add another charge, but we do know there's a grand jury in paneling, and so there probably are any amount of charges that could come forward.
Aaron Katersky.
They allege that he has been trying to improperly contact victims, witnesses, and other people, is trying to taint a future jury, and is employing his family to do his bidding. We got to break all this down and what it means for Sean Combs, and we're going to sit down with celebrity criminal defense attorney Bradford Cohen. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. Okay, so there are bombshells after bombshells in the government's new filing in the Sean Diddy Combs case, the sex trafficking, racketeering, prostitution case. I don't need to repeat all the allegations. You know what they all are by now. But prosecutors from the Southern District of New York submitted an opposition brief to Sean Combs' motion for bail that they are hoping that this new judge, in this case, Judge Arun Subramanian, will hear. And as we're going to lay out, prosecutors say not only is Sean Combs not entitled to bail, but essentially he shouldn't even get a hearing on this. And remember, Combs is currently in detention at the Metropolitan Detention Center out in Brooklyn, New York, after being denied bail by other judges. The main issues keeping him locked away are that the courts have held that the prosecutors have shown that he is a danger on the outside. He's a potential flight risk. Most notably was evidence put forward that he had been improperly contacting victims and witnesses in this case. And as we discussed on previous sidebars, Sean Combs' counsel has denied all this. They've indicated that all of those conversations were not done with the intent to engage in witness tampering or obstruction. And even, at least they say, one witness had contacted Combs, not the other way around. Well, the government has come out with new evidence of its own to justify pretrial detention. And let me just read you this from the beginning of their brief. They say, while attempting to evade law enforcement monitoring, the defendant has, among other things, orchestrated social media campaigns that are, in his own words, aimed at tainting the jury pool, made efforts to publicly leak materials he views as helpful to his case, and contacted witnesses through third parties? What? And that's not even half of it, because now we have a better idea of also who may be a key witness in this case. So much to break through, so much to break down. Let me bring on acclaimed criminal defense attorney to the stars, Bradford Cohen, who has famously represented celebrities like Kodak Black and Drake. Thank you so much for coming on, Bradford. I got to start with this bombshell. So the government says, look, you can't let him out because he has already been engaging in obstruction while locked up. They read, the government has reviewed dozens of recordings of BOP jail calls in which the defendant uses telephone accounts of at least 8 other inmates, which is against BOP regulations. Seemingly to avoid law enforcement monitoring, the defendant uses other inmates' PAC numbers to make phone calls to both individuals on the defendant's approved contact list, as well as other individuals who are not on the approved contact list. To obtain or maintain access to other inmates' PAC numbers, the defendant directs others to pay the inmates, including through payment processing apps and BOP account deposits. The defendant also frequently instructs individuals whom he contacts by telephone, including family members and his attorneys, to add other individuals via three-way call. This practice is not authorized by BOP as it helps conceal the identities of the contacted individuals. The government has reviewed multiple calls in which the defendant has instructed parties to dial in third parties, including members and associates of the enterprise and individuals who are not on the defendant's contact list. Bradford, what do we make of this?
Not much.
Really? Not much?
Yeah. This happens all the time in like every single case. They only make a big deal about it in this case. So the third party calling, when I can tell you in my 30 years, 28 years of practice, third party calling has been done in probably 90% of the cases that I have. In fact, sometimes third party calling to me. So what they would do is they'd get one of their friends on the line, and then that friend would then third party me in. And I always have to tell them, hey, this is an attorney-client privilege. You got a third party on the line. And when you have a third party on the line, anything we say is not attorney-client privilege. Sometimes, and this was really funny, I had a murder case in Tampa where they third partied me in. So it was the defendant calling his friend and his friend calling me. And I knew that the prosecutor was listening, and I didn't give that warning.
This.
I didn't say,
yeah.
And then I said, you know, hey, listen, we got evidence that are going to blow the doors off of them. And I knew she was listening, and I wanted to prove a point to my client. And then we went into court, and she's like, oh, I heard this conversation with Mr. Cohen. It wasn't attorney-client. And he said he's going to blow our doors off with this new evidence. I want to see this new evidence. And of course, we didn't have that new evidence. Yeah. So the third party, I just wanted to prove that the prosecutors, the smart prosecutors, especially in the Southern District of New York, are listening to every single phone call that you make. That's number one. Number two is the thing about using other inmates' numbers. That happens a lot too, because
them getting paid for it? Them getting paid to use it?
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, that happens all the time. It's
and again, the allegation is not only that, but also contacting people who are not on his contact list.
Yeah, because some people don't want to be on your contact list. Some people don't want to be on the government's contact, because once you're on the contact list, the government now has your name, your phone number. They could tap your phone. A lot of people don't want to be on contact lists. So because of that, they might use, Bob Smith's PAC number and to call their friend, but they don't understand. It goes by the phone number, right? So like if I'm calling from Bob Smith's PAC number, they're looking for the phone number that I'm calling. They're not looking for Sean Combs. So if my number is 555-1212, they could just do a search. Who has called this phone number in the past month? And that's what they do. And then they realize, oh, wait a minute, why is Bob Smith calling this phone number? And then they go back and they listen to the conversation.
Yeah.
Really, what is the biggest thing, the biggest takeaway from this is that when you first get a client, and clients might not listen to you, and he might not be listening to his attorney, and his attorney is a very good attorney. He might have told him this at the very beginning. Right. But at the very beginning of cases, you have to tell them every phone call is recorded. Don't think that you're playing cute when you have PAC numbers and you try to call someone else. They're going to find out. And that's just the way that it is, especially in the feds. So I don't take much of it unless those phone calls are really damning.
By the way, we are not trying to miss any major development in the Sean Combs case, like these legal filings. We got you covered. And I got to call out one of our incredible sponsors who, with their support, helps us to continue to do this. And that is Morgan & Morgan. And here's the thing. If you should get hurt, America's $8 million in New York. And all of these, mind you, considerably higher than the highest insurance offers in these cases. So if you're injured, you can easily start a claim at forthepeople.com/LC sidebar. Well, what about, they say, quote, the defendant also uses a non-authorized third-party messaging service called Contact Me ASAP to obscure his communications. The defendant appears to be using two Contact Me ASAP accounts. First, the defendant's BOP contact list includes a particular email address assigned to the defendant's son, which does not appear to be an account owned by the defendant's son, but instead appears to be an email address connected to Contact Me ASAP. Second, the defendant appears to be using another inmate's Contact Me ASAP account, primarily using email one. The defendant has exchanged hundreds of text messages via Contact Me ASAP with dozens of individuals, including attorneys and individuals who are not on the defendant's contact list. So any issue there?
Again, if he's contacting his attorneys, it's usually, it always is attorney-client privilege, unless there's a third party involved. Some people don't feel comfortable talking to their attorneys on jail calls, even though they know they're not supposed to be listening to those calls. I can tell you, they do listen to some of those phone calls. They're not supposed to. They might not use it in a court of law, but a lot of times you find that they oh, sorry, by accident, I didn't realize it was his attorney until I was 3 minutes in.
Right.
So I don't take much of that unless, like I said, unless they have some damning evidence that he is doing something crazy on those phone calls, or he's doing something crazy on that application. Other than that, just using it.
I guess the counter argument would be, putting aside what the content is, we'll get to that. If he's breaking the rules of the prison, right? This is not the prison. If he's breaking the rules of the detention center, should he be on the outside? Is he going to flout the rules of his bail? That would be the argument.
Yeah, I mean, that's a better argument, but the problem is that, you know, quote unquote, breaking the rules by making phone calls and things of that nature, unless those phone calls are the prohibited thing. Like if I am calling a witness directly and having direct witness contact by using this kind of obscure messaging and things of that nature, 100%. But I think just because he uses third-party calls, that's like, you know, like I said, 99% of the cases do that.
This is crazy to me. When I heard Diddy was using 8 or 9 different people, I was like, what the hell is going on in this prison? The power that this dude has in this prison is unbelievable. I couldn't even wrap my head. I thought this man was in a cell I thought they told him he was isolated 23 hours a day. That's a lie. What the hell is going on? And so if they saying this is weak and it's not nothing and it shouldn't hold him, well, then them grabbing his legal documents and having his legal documents might be what get him out of jail. That's serious business. They probably done tainted this case.
Okay, so let me. There's just so much to get to, so I want to get through everything with you. So the prosecutors have indicated that they will produce these calls to Combs and his lawyers through a filter team prior to what is a scheduled bail hearing on November 22nd, 2024. We're going to be covering that on Law and Crime. But then they write this. On multiple calls, often using the PAC numbers of other inmates, the defendant is explicit about his intention to use public statements to alter public perception. And the defendant leaves no doubt that the narrative he wants to leave is the potential jury pool's perception of this criminal proceeding. And examples of these efforts, they say, are plentiful. And then they black out and they redact all of those examples. First, Bradford, why the redactions?
Well, the redactions probably because they don't want it to then make it public what his position is. Like, I didn't do it. This one witness, she did X, Y, Z. I'm sure that there's things in there that the government doesn't want the public to hear because the government has their narrow view of what's going on, right? And whenever the defendant then wants to address that narrow view and put out his own statement or address it in a different way, they want to curtail that because they have a certain way to look at a case. They don't want anyone looking at it differently. I find this to be the most ironic thing. It's like it's hypocrisy at its best because although the New York Southern District office does not themselves leak things often, they have in the past, but on this case, I don't think there's any evidence that they leaked anything. They also know that other individuals are leaking things that help their case, and they're not curtailing it. Like the video of Cassie was certainly leaked. My guess is it was her attorney who leaked it. I don't know for sure, but I would guess that it would be her attorney who leaked that video because that video was in their possession, and that video is something that helps her case to say, hey, I'm not a defendant. I'm a victim here. I will guarantee that the government knew that video was in their possession and that the government knew that some individual was leaking that. And they could have found out who leaked it, but they don't care because it helps their case.
That's what Combs' attorneys have been saying. Yeah, that's what Combs' attorneys have been saying.
Yeah, and if it didn't help their case, 100%. And if it didn't help their case, they would then be curtailing it.
Well, here's a specific example that's not redacted, that's not blacked out about what they say happens. Because they say after the court entered a gag order, by the way, to not disclose information about the case that applies to the prosecutors, investigative teams, law enforcement, but it also includes Sean Combs and his attorneys. The prosecutors write, the defendant enlisted family members to plan and execute a social media campaign around the defendant's birthday with the intention of influencing the potential jury in this criminal proceeding. And by the way, we covered this on Sidebar. We played that video for you where you can hear his kids wishing him a happy birthday. Combs is on the other line, seems to be happy. But the prosecutors write, at the defendant.
And that's another thing that make me think that he got action. If they are so worried about his son posting positive videos about Diddy on TikTok because it might influence the jury, that's crazy to me. Like, what the? Y'all don't want his family to say nothing positive about him. Y'all running these campaigns 24/7. What? I thought y'all had a good case. What's going on here? Oh, the problem is Diddy seems to be standing on 10 and forcing them to go to trial, which means all the jurors have to be convinced that he is guilty. If he can get any of them, the jurors, to go against it, then he'll be able to beat this case. And I think that's what they're hanging their head on. And that's why they're trying to stop any positive information, any celebrities. They probably have been threatened. Do not say anything positive about this man or we're going to indict y'all ass. Because they scared that if he can get 1 or 2 jurors, he'll beat this case. That's serious business.
Defendant's carefully curated direction. The defendant's children posted a video to their respective social media accounts showing the defendant's children gathered to celebrate the defendant's birthday. The defendant, from within the MDC, the Metropolitan Detention Center, then monitored the analytics, i.e. audience engagement, and explicitly discussed with his family how to ensure that the video had its desired effect on potential jury members in this case. Bradford, is that a stretch to say that this is tampering with the jury? Or could they say, hey, look, we're just trying to show positivity to change the public perception about him? What do you make of that allegation?
Yeah. I make very little of that allegation. Again, I think that, when you're in this situation and you can put out some PR that makes you look better than what they're saying. And listen, he's done a lot of good. It's not like he hasn't done good in his career. He has done good in his career, pointing out the good things that he's done in his career, pointing out that it's his birthday, pointing out that he's got a bunch of kids, to quote unquote affect the potential jury pool. There is no jury yet. The jury pool could be from Staten Island. It could be from, Manhattan. I mean, the fact is that anything you put on your social media could affect a potential jury pool that we have no idea where they're pulling from, and we have no idea who they are. I think it's a huge stretch to say that would affect a jury pool. Would I think that it would affect perception of Sean Combs? Sure. And what's wrong with that? He's not talking about the case. It's not a gag order on happy birthday to Sean Combs. And it's not a gag order to say, hey, at one point he gave, $50,000 to St. Jude's Hospital. That's not the quote unquote gag order.
So let me push back on that a little bit, because and this was something that I wondered, because his son had taken over his Instagram and was posting videos of his father's music videos and behind the scenes footage. And I was curious at the time about what the purpose might have been. But this is what prosecutors say in their filing. The defendant's own words make clear that his intent is to improperly influence the jury pool in this criminal proceeding. During other calls, the defendant makes clear his intention to anonymously publish information that he thinks will help his defense in this case. And then there's a portion that is redacted, but it also continues. The defendant's efforts to obstruct the integrity of this proceeding also includes relentless efforts to contact potential witnesses, including victims of his abuse, who could provide power.
See, stuff like this let you know they don't plan on using none of the celebrity information or the celebrity tapes to convict them, or they wouldn't be talking about BS like this. See, they're going to protect them celebrities, and they want to convict that man without the real dirt, the big names. They want to convict him without that. They want about this small BS. Say, hey man, you don't worry about that. Him going on social media. You got all the goods on him, right? Come on, these people here.
Powerful testimony against him. For example, on October 4th, 2024, in a call involving the defendant and one of his adult sons, the defendant says, and then again, it's redacted. And then they write, provides the clear inference that the defendant's goal is to blackmail victims and witnesses either into silence or providing testimony helpful to his defense. So Bradford, in other words, they're saying, A, they have him on tape saying, I want you to put forward this social media content to help my defense. And B, communications about him trying to reach out to people in the case and maybe using his family. Now, what do you think about that?
So those are two different things. The first part of it about him reaching out about social media, I don't put much weight into it. I think it's something that every defendant that's popular will do. It's something that every defendant that is popular has done. When you have, these allegations, and there's certain allegations that, this guy's a bad guy, you're going to have social media saying that he's a good guy. And whether or not it is orchestrated by the defendant or orchestrated by a PR team, it makes no difference to me. The second part of that, if he's trying to reach out to witnesses, that's the part that, obviously is probably their strongest argument, right? If they have witnesses that are willing to come in or people that are willing to testify to say, hey, listen, he gave me XYZ in order to say XYZ, that's completely different. I don't think they have that, because if they did have that, I think they would be charging for every single witness that he has tried to do. The government is not just going to sit back and be like, oh, he paid that guy, we're not going to charge him for that. They're going to charge him for every single little thing that he has done or has attempted to do. So they, just not one count of obstruction. They could hit him with 10 counts of obstruction for every witness. I just don't know if that's what they have. I don't put a lot of faith in the allegations from the government when I have seen in my career those allegations fall short of what they're actually saying in those documents.
And I guess if they don't charge his family members or people that, he's charged with racketeering conspiracies, accused of reaching out to alleged co-conspirators too. If the government doesn't charge any of those people, what does that tell you? And by the way, should we anticipate?
Revolutionary salute to our queen, good kid in the Mad City for the donation to the war chest. Revolution is a way of life. I absolutely appreciate the little queen. Salute to you.
Charges against, family members? If this is what's happened, this is what the government's alleging?
If the government actually has the goods on this obstruction, they can't use. No reason not to charge them. But they got the goods. See, the real dirt they can't use because it would destroy the. You don't understand. You could cripple the U.S. economy if they do this to Hollywood and to our politicians. They all trapped. People will lose confidence in their elected officials if they see the debauchery that they're involved in. They trying their best, and that's why P. Diddy gonna play him. He gonna keep doing what he doing, and now I see what's going on, man. They're gonna wind up saying this is too much. Wind up trying to get this man a 10-year sentence. He done been in there 2 years. Rest on ankle monitor. I'm telling you where this shit is going. They got the evidence, but they being petty about his son posting videos on TikTok. They really wasting court time on shit like that. And you telling me you got all of the Diddy tapes? Come on, man. This is disgusting. Problem is I don't think they actually have the goods. I think that what they're really looking at is that individuals might have reached out to him to say, hey, listen, this XYZ happened to me. I'm going to file a civil lawsuit. I'm demanding $50,000. And it could be that they're settling civil lawsuits, and the government always feels when you settle a civil lawsuit that is under the guise of buying off a witness. That's always been their position. Doesn't matter what case it is, doesn't matter who you're representing. If there is a civil lawsuit that is pending or a civil lawsuit that could be filed that a potential witness says, hey, I want to settle and I want XYZ amount of money, and you give it to them, the government's position is always you gave it to them to buy their silence or to change their testimony. That's just the way that it always is in every case that I've ever had, and in every case that I've ever read about in terms of federal witnesses that also file civil lawsuits.
Bradford, I got to ask you about this part, because prosecutors say, they write this, quote, then after the defendant was in custody, BOP investigators recovered the following notes from the defendant's cell during a pre-planned nationwide sweep of BOP facilities.
Big mistake.
A strong inference to be drawn from the defendant's communications with Witness 2, and I'll explain later on who that is, and his personal notes is that the defendant paid Witness 2 after she posted her statement. So Bradford, first, we had reported that there was this sweep by the feds of the MDC, and maybe those notes were a part of what they discovered. But then Sean Combs' team has just responded in their own filing today, and they write, defense counsel has recently learned that the prosecutors are in possession of attorney-client privilege material, including the defendant's own written notes. This search and seizure are in violation of Mr. Combs' 4th, 5th, and 6th Amendment rights. Moreover, the targeted seizure of a pretrial detainee's work product and privileged materials created in preparation for trial is outrageous government conduct amounting to a substantive due process violation.
You did that on purpose, man. I don't give a damn what nobody say. Puffed and paid these dirty-ass cops to seize his legal documents on purpose. The police not that stupid. Are you kidding me? Before they raid in the cell, they are telling they're not just going. They're not just going into no cell willy nilly. They're having a meeting about what's finna go down, and then you going in the Mr. Combs cell. This high profile case. They're talking about what they're finna do, and they're letting these people know: do not touch those legal documents. Why? that could throw out a case. Law, they're very serious about the law. You know, I could be rolling down the streets with 10 kilos, 100 kilos in my trunk. If you don't arrest me properly, it don't matter what I got in there. You violated the law. See? You see what they did? They touched that man's legal documents. That man, this man actually say, "Hey man, how can I fight this legal battle when they got all the information on how I'm gonna fight?" And then the prosecution said, "Oh, we do have these documents." Oh man, come on, man, y'all done tainted the case in the beginning of the case. This is ridiculous.
Violation, because the prosecutors are currently in possession of privileged material and are actively using this material to detain the defendant. The defense requests an immediate evidentiary hearing. Two sides to this, Bradford. What do you think?
Out behind that.
I side with the defense. As usual, I side with the defense. Not always, but in this case, to me, it really is outrageous that they're using his notes. And if it's work product,
y'all know I want that scumbag behind jail, but what they doing is disgusting. I'm like, man, what the fuck are y'all doing, man? Are y'all trying to let this man out of jail? Are y'all throwing this shit down the toilet? What the hell are y'all doing? Or you got to be doing this on purpose. They got to be doing this on purpose. There's no way in hell you can seize that man legal documents, man, and then have them in your office. You know goddamn well that's illegal. And to take the case from the beginning. There's no Supreme Court is gonna allow this to happen, man. They're not gonna set the precedent that this can happen in the case. They can't do that. No matter what P. Diddy did, they can't do it.
Work product. I don't think they should be able to. Think about this. They're going into cells and they're looking for usually weapons, illegal items, things that you shouldn't have, phones, cell phones and tablets, things that are snuck into the jail. Drugs.
If he was a gang leader, they'd be looking for gang literature. So you looking through papers. Man, what the fuck is you doing touching those legal documents, bro? If you're not doing this on purpose. You've been paid off. They check all these people's bank accounts, man. Check their offshore accounts, man. It's got to be a setup. This is crazy because he's gonna get that. See, this in order for the judge to say, okay, I won't throw his case out, but what I will do is we'll give him house arrest. So that's coming. That's coming. It's coming because the judge gonna have to be fair real soon with the state. They're gonna say, hey, well, I tell you what, we ain't gonna throw the case out. But they're going to send him home to fight his case over shit like this.
And here, he probably has a pile of paperwork or notebooks, and they start going through each notebook and reading them and determining whether or not these notes should be used against them in a court of law. It really is one of those positions where why you don't want your client in a jail situation, why you want him bonded out, because while he's in jail, if they can just do this, how do you contact your client? How do you give him paperwork? How do you give him certain things from your law office? How does he take notes to discuss with you the next time he's going to see you when you come to the jail? So he's taking notes in a notebook thinking like, this is what I want to discuss with my lawyer. And then they seize that and they go through it and they use it against you. I do think it's overreaching. I think that there is some case law. The only thing that I'm worried about is if they say this is some sort of crime or a crime fraud exception where the notes themselves are making reference to, obstruction or something like that. They could try to make that argument, but it's really a bootstrap argument because what they're saying is we seize the notes first and then we determine that they could be crime fraud exception. Right. That's really the problem. It's not that they knew they were a crime fraud exception and they seized them afterwards.
Right. So just to be clear about everything right now, first of all, before I let you go, because Bradford has to go, but we have more of this to go through, I wanted to ask you big picture about this. Not necessarily whether everything we've talked about so far is about whether he's going to be charged with an additional crime. It's about whether or not he is entitled to bail. And that's the main issue. Based on these allegations put forward by prosecutors, and yes, it's a lower standard than we're talking about in a kind of a criminal case about a conviction of with a criminal charge. Do you think prosecutors could potentially meet the standard that he should not be released?
Yeah, I mean, listen, in federal court, it's very difficult to get bond on any case. You know, even the cases where you're somewhat entitled to bond, it's still hard to get because these prosecutors come in with these allegations, and no federal judge wants to give someone the opportunity to flee or to influence a witness or to do things. So a lot of federal judges, they don't want to stick their neck out if they don't have to, and if the law is on their side and there's some discretion there. In these cases,
these people doing exactly what they accuse the family of doing, they don't want the family to humanize him. They're humanizing him by doing this to his rights. They're gonna make every fucking civil rights team in America sign up to help him if he get convicted over what they're doing right now. No way in hell if he can't get a fat case. Anybody, the conviction not gonna stand. And I believe that's exactly what they want. They need to have a change of venue to begin with. If this is New York, they need to fucking move this case out of New York immediately. This man from New York. This man from New York, man. And this man money, he already done seized that jail and everybody doing whatever the fuck he tell him to do. That's crazy. But now just so happened a shakedown go on and somebody's dumb enough to take his legal documents. Come on, man. How much did he pay for that? But they got to move this man out of New York. That's fucking ridiculous, man, that this man is in New York, man.
It's up to the defense to show why he should get bond, to show how he should get bond, and to put forth a bond package that's acceptable to the court. So my guess is I don't think he's going to get bond on the third try either. And I think it's a very low standard where the prosecutor can show, unless the defense is coming with something phenomenal, it's a very low standard for the prosecutor to show, hey, listen, this guy shouldn't get bond because of X, Y, and Z. All that you have to really do is make the allegations. Even with a hearing, you usually have someone come up there and say, oh, look, he's making third-party calls, and they make a bigger deal of it than it is. And generally, they don't get bond. So I would say there's a 98% chance he doesn't get bond.
I agree with you. I will be very curious to see these arguments laid out. I imagine defense counsel will make a lot of the arguments you have just made. This is why you get paid the big bucks, Bradford. This is why we have you on. Love talking to you. Sorry it took so much of your time. Really appreciate it. Bradford Cohen, everybody, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, so I want to continue this. Obviously, Bradford's so generous with his time. Appreciate it, but a lot more to get to in this filing. So prosecutors write, since being in custody, the defendant has deployed family members to carry out obstructive conduct on his behalf, as evidenced by jail calls. The defendant asked family members to reach out to potential victims and witnesses, create narratives to influence the jury pool, and pursue marketing strategies to sway public opinion. So that's what we talked about before. This next part is fascinating because I think we may have an idea of a potential key witness in this case. So the prosecutors, they address Combs' claims that his contacts with any potential witnesses were innocuous. Prosecutors say, no. They write, the defendant also claims that the defendant's contacts in September 2024 with an individual represented by counsel who wanted to make a public statement, witness 2, were not in any way obstructive because the defendant and witness 2 were previously in frequent contact. However, the contact between the defendant and witness 2, who were bandmates, stopped in March 2024. And from the timeline and the context of the defendant's contacts with witness 2, it is clear that when the defendant reinitiated contact with witness 2 in September 2024, his purpose was to ensure that witness 2 was on his side and to pressure witness 2 to make a public statement denying allegations of violence by the defendant. The defendant reached out to witness 2 on September 11th, 2024, and sent her a copy of the lawsuit against the defendant in which witness 2's name was mentioned several times. The defendant then called witness 2 and they spoke for nearly 6 minutes. After reading the lawsuit, witness 2 called the defendant back at his request and they spoke for over 4 minutes. Evidently, the defendant and witness 2 discussed witness 2 drafting a statement, as immediately after the call, the defendant told witness 2 in a text message, and then that's redacted. But then they go on to say, from September 11th, 2024 through September 15th, 2024, the defendant and witness 2 exchanged multiple texts and had multiple calls, at least 128 phone contacts in total. Witness 2 ultimately made a statement about the lawsuit via an Instagram post on September 13th, 2024. Now, a couple things to break down here. If these allegations are true, this was right before Sean Combs was arrested. So if you're prosecutors and you think that he's reaching out to potential witnesses and influencing what they're saying, that is an argument for why they needed to jump in and arrest him immediately, and now are saying why he doesn't deserve to be out on bail. But I think we know who witness 2 is, because witness 2, these allegations seem to be in line with Kalina Harper. who was in the musical group Dirty Money with Sean Combs and Dawn Richard. Dawn Richard filed her own lawsuit against Sean Combs. And we know that Kalina Harper on September 13th wrote this on her Instagram. I acknowledge the recent lawsuit filed by Dawn Richard in which my name has been mentioned 33 times. While I fully respect Dawn's right to recount her experiences, I want to emphasize that her account reflects her personal perspective and should not be interpreted as a universal truth applicable to everyone involved. So again, that seems to be consistent with what prosecutors are saying. Does that mean Kalina Harper is going to be a key witness in the criminal case? Maybe. Now, I want to finish up with some more arguments from prosecutors here. Like, for example, they say the defense hasn't presented any new information or evidence to justify bail. And they also say, and I think this one is key, we're rejecting Combs' defense that he deserves pretrial release because he can't prepare for trial. They make the argument, look, the MDC, it has provided him with more than reasonable accommodations to meet with his lawyers. He can meet with them 7 days a week. He has access to a separate conference room. He can talk with them by telephone and written communication. And saying, oh, there's a lot of discovery in this case. You can't properly review it in the MDC. They don't have the proper conditions. They say that argument is inadequate. And they also make the point, look, if Sean Combs needs more time to prepare for trial to review this evidence, then guess what? He should request an adjournment of the trial date. He was the one who wanted this trial so quickly, which is currently scheduled for May of 2025. That's a good point. I would imagine if I had Bradford Cohen on, he would disagree with me, but I'm sure he would talk about the conditions at the MDC, which are absolutely horrific. But look, the prosecutors say that shouldn't be a reason that he should be granted pretrial release. Now, I also want to highlight where they mention victim one, because we believe that is Cassandra Ventura, potentially the key witness in this case. And this is Combs' ex-girlfriend who filed her sexual assault lawsuit against him back in November of 2023, arguably, by the way, starting the ball rolling on all of these lawsuits facing Sean Combs, the criminal charges. But here, prosecutors were fighting back against this argument from the defense that the text messages will show that their relationship was just tumultuous, it was toxic, that what you're seeing here is not an example of a freak off or sex trafficking or anything illegal, because obviously there's been a large back and forth where prosecutors say, you want a prime reason why Sean Combs shouldn't be released? Look at the 2016 video of him purportedly beating Cassandra Ventura in a hotel hallway that was published by CNN several months ago. The defense has said that's not an example of her trying to escape a freak off. This is a really unfortunate domestic spat. It's not examples of sex trafficking or racketeering. That shouldn't be used against him for why he should be locked up. Well, prosecutors write, not so fast. Quote, the defendant cherry picks to paint a misleading picture, ignoring numerous other messages in the record between the defendant and victim one, documenting the defendant's physical abuse of victim one and his threats to expose recordings of freak-offs. And of course, again, the freak-offs are the central claim of this criminal case, these coerced, prolonged sexual experiences where people were forced to participate. There was threats, there was violence, there was an exchange of money, sex workers, transporting the sex workers across state lines. But this is where the prosecutors say, they say, we have text messages to show this is more than what the defense says. There's a text message reading, you know what sick and disgusting S I was reminded of the other day? You forcing me to blank, or you were going to leak some S. I have a black eye and fat lip. You are sick for thinking it's okay to do what you've done, and I still have crazy bruising. I turn my head for a second, and you get effed up, and you drag me down the hall by my hair. I have bleeding cuts. You hit me in the head 2 good times. Again, I think Cassandra Ventura is going to be a key witness, if not the star witness in this trial. And putting their relationship on the focus, these messages, this back and forth will be, I think, a really, really big component of it. Now, going to one final point, it's interesting because prosecutors say the bail package that Sean Combs and his defense attorneys have put forward is inadequate. $50 million bond, home confinement with 24/7 monitoring by private security, only having visitors be family members, no internet service, no telephone service. They say it's all not sufficient. Why? Because they're alleging he deployed family members to engage in obstruction. that he can always get people, this is what they say, to do his bidding. Prosecutors say, quote, he can always get people to do his bidding, like employees, family members, MDC inmates, private security personnel. They wouldn't be immune. So again, really interesting arguments put forward by the prosecution. We'll see what the defense response will be. Saw a little bit of it talking about the notes, and this was a violation of his constitutional rights. But I'm waiting to see what happens at this hearing on November 22nd. Should be fireworks. We're going to do our best to cover it for you here on Law and Crime Inside.
Breaking news tonight, Freak Diddy. Eyewitnesses describe floor, walls, and ceiling $500,000 of mirrors. Floor, wall, and ceiling covered in mirrors for, quote, wall-to-wall debauchery at Sean Combs's sex freak-offs. Prosecutors say a ruse for this, as a lawyer warns celebrities pay up or face reputation damning lawsuits. Good evening. I'm Nancy Grace. This is Crime Stories. Thank you for being with us.
Ray J, a longtime friend of Diddy, claims celebrities in Combs' inner circle are so scared of being dragged into legal action that they're seeking out potential accusers and offering cash to keep their names out of the lawsuits. Ray J says unnamed celebs have even approached him as a possible vessel for leaks due to his friendship with Combs.
Joining us, an all-star panel to make sense of what we are learning tonight. Let's move off of the $500,000 worth of mirrors. I guess so. Diddy can see sex no matter where he looks, up, down, or sideways. That's a whole nother can of worms. Joining us tonight, special guest Courtney B and his lawyer, Ariel Mitchell. But first, to Hermania Rodriguez, chief U.S. reporter with the Daily Mail and star of the podcast, The Trial of Diddy. Hermania, thank you for being with us. What am I hearing that celebs are offering people? Not only are they being threatened, either pay up or you're going to be part of a smear campaign, but that they are actually paying alleged victims not to testify?
Well, this actually came from another hip hop star, Ray J, who claimed that he knows that celebrities are scared out there and reaching out to potential victims and offering them money in a typical catch at keep story. So their names never come out in these stories.
So I guess the short answer to that would be yes. And you're right, Hermania. It's all coming from Ray J. Listen.
Because I'm hearing about artists paying victims to keep their name out of it.
Do you know people who have had demands put upon them where they have paid off to keep this quiet?
Here's what I do know. People do catch and kills all day. And a catch and kill, I don't know if, of course, you know, but for the regular world, somebody has the truth, somebody pays you to keep it quiet, and hopefully that money that you got paid secures your happiness while you watch the lie continue to succeed.
I want to just make sure I understand you. What you're saying is what? That you know people who have been approached by women, men, whatever, who have said, give me money and I won't talk?
Here's the other way around that, Harvey. I'll give you money, please don't talk.
Sounds like Ray J is doing everything he can not to answer a direct question from our friend Harvey Levin at TMZ. That's where he got that footage, and it's from their new docuseries, The Downfall of Diddy, Inside the Freak-Offs, and you can see it. It's streaming on Tubi for free. Okay, let me understand what I'm hearing. Joining us, Ariel Mitchell, who is very intensely involved in this case, representing a client involving allegations against Sean Combs. Ariel Mitchell, what I perceive, what I interpret Ray J saying, and Levin's trying to nail him down, is that people, celebs, and others are willing to pay to keep their name out of this case, out of Sean Combs's case.
I think what Ray J was saying is, in general, these catch and kills are happening every day, all day, and they will continue to happen. But in this situation, any lawyer who sends out a demand letter would send it out to anybody they intend to sue, which would probably be to individuals related to Diddy, who that case may affect. So to that point, I think that is happening. Before I filed my first case, I did reach out to several individuals who we ended up filing lawsuits against to see if they were interested in settlement, pre-litigation settlement is what it's called.
They want to talk to me. They want to talk to me about what happened to them. They call me. They feel like they can trust me.
Wait a minute. Calling you for what? Calling you for what?
Because they want to tell me about certain things that happened with them and Diddy.
Ray, I want to make sure I understand this. Are these high-profile people calling you because they've had some affiliation with Diddy that they don't want to come out, and they think you might be the vessel for it coming out? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. And I don't even know why I just said it, but I said it, so what? Now they gotta be mad. Come get me.
Were they specific about what they did with Diddy?
I don't want to say. I think I said too much.
Sounds like to me, Mr. Ray J needs to be talking to federal investigators and not to Harvey Levin, my friend. Of course, I'm glad he did speak to Levin, and Levin is trying his best to nail him down for answers. That video you just saw is from our friends at TMZ from their new docuseries, The Downfall of Diddy Inside the Freakoffs. And there are allegations coming from other angles in addition to Ray J. Listen.
In my view, if you were there and you knew somebody was being drugged because you had seen it happen in a previous party or a previous situation, and you didn't do anything, and you allowed it to happen, and you continue to enjoy yourself and party and whoop and holler and have a good time, as far as I'm concerned, you are just as liable as the individual who shipped the person in, who paid the persons that were there, who kept them longer than they thought they were going to be there, who bought the drugs, who took the money out of the bank, who put the drugs in a little shot of either a lemon shot or some sort of champagne, and participated in this egregious conduct. You're just as guilty as far as I'm concerned.
Hermania Rodriguez joining us, chief U.S. reporter with DailyMail.com and star of the Trial of Diddy podcast. Hermania, what exactly is the lawyer saying?
So this lawyer says he's representing more than 100 victims of Diddy, and he has said that the victimizers include other celebrities, businessmen, politicians, and he said that he has already sent letters demanding that they pay up if they don't want to face civil lawsuits for what they did with Diddy, allegedly.
Joining me now is a special guest, Courtney B. Now, you may know him by his full name, but since he first went public about his knowledge of the Sean Puffy Combs case, he has actually been getting death threats. Straight out to you, Courtney, thank you for being with us. What is your connection, or was your connection, with Sean Combs?
They say you all over YouTube to get these black
in the music
on
business
this show.
You know, I came up with Tupac. He came up with Bad Boy.
Let me talk to you about the current case against Sean Combs, Mr. B. What kind of death threats have you been getting since you first came out with your knowledge?
It was crazy.
They called me Pieces from Little Italy, in New York, and from Maryland. They all started calling me Pizza. It was a thing said on YouTube or Instagram that him and his son said, "Get rid of Pizza."
Courtney, you state that you have tapes of freak-offs. Did you take the video yourself?
No, I never was in the company of. Never went to a party.
Then where did they come from?
Stuart gave it to me. He was on the phone with Kim. He was up in Atlanta recording with this artist I had, and they lightly asked me to cut his hair. And then after his hair was cut,
now Diddy probably paying this dude. See, Diddy probably paying this dude to tank the case because, like he just said, they call me Pizza. If they call me Pizza, if you listen to the audio, and Diddy was telling his sons get rid of Pizza, you know they call me Little Pizza. That was artificial intelligence, man. And this is just discussing that Nancy Grace used to be a federal prosecutor, and all of the people, everybody bring this man on their show. You know what I'm saying? It's just crazy. They're not really vetting. You know, this man don't got no tapes, no Diddy, none of that shit. Yes, he got called into the grand jury, which was, he told them people he didn't have no tapes. All this is for financial gains. This shit is ridiculous, man.
Well, he go out to dinner with me and stay the night. And I got real furious. So I said, no. I was going through a hall. That's just Mr. Stewart was there. And he said, hold up, I want to talk to my man, Courtney B. And I heard a voice say, Courtney B, I know him. Put him on the phone. Said, you don't know Courtney B. She said, I'm Thomas Kim. So he put it on speaker. He said, yo, someone want to speak to you. It was Kim. And I didn't really want to talk because I brought this guy all the way to Atlanta from New Jersey to record, to sign over to Raleigh. But they told him cut his hair. He said, Court, I can't cut my hair. My grandmother and my mother grew him as a kid. So I had to convince him to cut it. Like, this is what they wanted. They went from hair cutting to sleeping with him, to going to dinner, to, and they got me so fed up. I didn't want to talk to him or Kim at the time. So when I was out in the car going back and forth on the phone, he came out and said, yo, she really want to talk to you. She got something for you. I said, I'm going to the hotel. He said, where you at? I said, I'm staying at a house out at the airport. So he came by and he gave me the flash drive. I thought it was an artist. I didn't know what it was. I thought it was something she wanted me to hear. At the time, I had explained to this mother and father that her son is not being signed.
Are you telling me that you got the tapes from Kim Porter? They were given to you through an intermediary from Kim Porter?
Yes.
Okay. What do the tapes depict?
It depicts sex, people getting high, drunk, a lot of celebrities, words that she made like it was a diary or a memo or whatever it was. At the time, that's between the first one I got was 2008, and then his wars came, and then he was killed. So it scared me a little bit because he got killed, and then Chris Lightly got killed.
In the videos, in the tapes, Courtney B, do women appear to be drugged or drunk?
Compared to be stuck, like in a trance, because one of them was on the table and he's eating off her. You understand? And they was, I'm looking at this girl straight naked and she don't feel like she embarrassed or anything. Water poured on her, whatever it was, tubs. Yes, it seemed like there was more in the trance than more than drunk. Because you're drunk, you usually slurring.
A trance.
Yes.
What else did you observe?
I observed a lot. It was a lot. I didn't watch it all because I don't like seeing two males having sex. I'm not into it.
Courtney B, you state that you don't want to say too much because of, as you said, Orlando, I think you said. Then why, may I ask, did you give a press conference?
Because then people someone tried to extort me. Said, if you don't give me more stuff, I'm going to tell them who you are and who you got the stuff from. So I didn't want it to go past me because people got families and I got families. So I came out and said I was the one who gave him the memoir, the book.
Do you have an unedited manuscript of Kim Porter's book?
Yes.
What do you make of claims by her children that the memoir was not by her?
I look at it, it's their mother. They want to defend their mother. But you got to understand, other people was somebody's mother and daughter as well. I believe the sons had something to do with it as well because how the film was shot, Diddy couldn't control the focus on it. Two, that I think they anticipated some. And of course, it's their mother who don't want it. And I'd like to apologize to the family about the mother. I didn't put a picture on the book. That wasn't my work. I think she got to a point that she was with it because it showed that she was foursomes, couples on couples, and her lover was in there, who she was a sexual with. So, you know, a scorned woman going to say her last words to be known.
Courtney B, what do you think about Ray J's claims to our friend Harvey Levin?
It's not a claim, it's a sign to let them know that he's trying to get up money. He don't have anything on it. Diddy not going to trust him with no tapes or anything. He was Diddy little boy toy himself. So what he did, he's letting them know to pay him so he could help with Diddy and his family. You know, that who trusts Ray J? Diddy helped Ray J with Fabulous. When something's going on between Fabulous and Ray J, he got Fabulous to leave Ray J alone. What he's doing, he's scaring people out there so they could come to him and put up money.
In another resurfaced video, singer Machine Gun Kelly, or MGK, describes his wild Las Vegas New Year's Eve bender with Diddy when he was just 20 years old. MGK says Diddy escorted him to 9 clubs on New Year's Eve, paying for roughly 270 bottles to supply them and an entourage of women. Eventually, MGK tried to say his goodnights, but Diddy told him, "We're not going to sleep." The singer says the partying continued for more than 48 hours. A former party planner for Sean Combs reveals the rumor that most Diddy parties devolved into orgies are true. The planner also claims the parties averaged a $500,000 price tag for food, alcohol, decorations, and entertainment, including acrobats, live animals, and entertainers that Combs called models, who were obviously hired sex workers. For one event, Combs demanded an entire room be covered in mirrors so the debauchery could be viewed from every angle imaginable. The planner says Combs' vision was sex everywhere you looked.
$500,000 to cover floors, walls, and ceilings with mirrors so Sean Combs could, quote, see sex everywhere you look. That was his, quote, vision. Did Sean Combs redecorate a whole wing, a whole room with hundreds of mirrors for a freak-off? And again, whether we like it or not, orgies are not crimes. However, drugging people and then having sex with them while they are in a stupor, much as Courtney B described, is a crime. Joining me, Dr. Bethany Marshall, renowned psychoanalyst out of LA and author of Deal Breaker. You can see her now on Peacock. Jump in, Bethany.
Nancy, those floor to ceiling, across the floor mirrors are because men who commit sexual aggression, sexual assault are voyeurs. He probably spent a long time assembling these places to assault victims because that was a part of his sexual excitement. That was a part of preparing for these orgies.
This, as we learned that Sean Combs is not languishing in a tiny cell. He's moved on to greener pastures. Listen.
While the public has been led to believe Sean Diddy Combs is languishing in a tiny cell at the MDC, it turns out the disgraced mogul is having a blast behind bars. Combs has been moved to the lowest security unit in the prison, 4 North, where he has access to a tablet, cards, music, TV, movies, ping pong, air hockey, and even a peep show. Who needs expensive freak-offs when you can spy on female inmates through a grate in the floor?
Joining us, Hermania Rodriguez from Daily Mail. What? Explain to me his new living conditions.
Right, so he remains in the same Brooklyn jail, but he hasn't been moved to a part of the jail that's for high-profile inmates. In this part of the jail, the president of Honduras has been. Bankman-Fried is also held there, and it's the idea is to keep these famous inmates safe from others. But as you mentioned, it also provides them with a few extra privileges that inmates that have been there before, say, include being able to look at the female inmates who this person said, this former inmate said the female inmates like to put on a show and even lift up their shirts as they see the male prisoners walk by. So yeah, it sounds like Diddy is in a better situation now that he was at the beginning in the jail.
Joining me, Robert Crispin, private investigator at Crispin Special Investigation, but former federal task force officer with the DOJ and DEA Miami Field Division. You can find him at crispininvestigations.com. Robert, why is he, Sean Combs, who has allegedly victimized so many women while they're drugged, why is he getting to look at female inmates?
Well, I'll tell you this. He's got some problems coming, and they're probably moving him down there to give him a little more freedom to get him out of general population where he's going to get stabbed or beat up in the middle of the night. Down in these areas, there's less population, and it's a little bit more easily controlled where, you know, New York jail is going to have a problem on their hand if somebody ends up stabbing Diddy and killing him.
You could be eating mango too with the ocean as your backyard. I ain't special.
Nah, they see this dude right here, man. This dude right here, man. They gotta really prepare for this dude, man. See, I'll let he gonna get stabbed now. I was saying that too, but flunkies, these flunkies in prison doing anything for money, man. So Diddy running these jails, putting this shit on these dudes' accounts. You know, ain't nobody gonna stab Diddy. He put money all in their account. He don't give a damn about people talking about he paying for protection. He's been paying for protection his whole goddamn life. So that's not gonna happen. What is gonna happen is this nigga gonna have too much power in any jail he go to.
Allow myself to not have mango.
As long as he got hundreds of millions of dollars, they're gonna do anything. Not the warden.
Please join us on our mission to find missing people, especially children, to solve.
Known to have looser rules than Gen Pop and boasts marginally better meals than what Combs was receiving on Suicide Watch, including chicken sandwiches, hot dogs, and wings. In addition to many forms of entertainment, Combs is allowed 300 minutes of phone time each month, but still does not get a pillow for his less than twin-sized bed.
Joining us now, Lynn Shaw, founder, executive director, Lynn's Warriors, committed to ending sexual exploitation and trafficking, and host of Lynn's Warriors on YouTube. Lynn, thank you for being with us. Lynn, so I don't know if you got the gist of this, but Sean Combs, in his new digs, has the ability to stare at female inmates and is living in a dorm-style atmosphere with an upgraded menu. Thoughts?
My thoughts are chicken sandwiches and all of this, and he has peepholes where he's able to communicate with women. You couldn't write this. This is a bad Hollywood script. Listen, our sources told us all along he was getting special privileges. We heard this right away. No, I didn't have any proof, but I heard he was getting better food. I heard he...
It's going to be impossible for them not to. Remember, I told y'all this before. Anybody pay attention? I said I was in Galveston County Jail when Robert Durst, his family was Wall Street billionaires. I was in the county jail. I was on the 3rd floor, 3A, and he was across in a one-man for sale for high-profile celebrities. And I never forget, everything he had in the cell was a free world. It come from outside the prison. At the time he had a CD player, a DVD player, whatever that, no, a VCR, whatever, TV from out there, a mattress. All his food was coming from outside. And we was like, man, why this man getting this damn special privilege? And the jailers were saying because they didn't want nothing to go wrong with his case. He wound up beating the case. He dismembered the body. That was a big thing on the news. He dismembered the body. We found out that's not a felony. You can dismember a body. That's a misdemeanor. But anyway, and they say the judge was corrupt. Her name was Susan Chris, because she was one of my judges at one point in time. But anyway, he was getting special treatment. When you people have unbelievable amounts of money, you can't imagine what's gonna go on in there. I mean, the people gonna do what the hell they say, man. The people broke, they're gonna be able to do whatever the fuck they want. People just not gonna believe it. But yeah, they do whatever they want for those donations to go towards certain individuals. And one thing about Puffy, the man got hundreds of millions of dollars, man.
Was getting special things that other people weren't, such as phone privileges. I heard all kinds of things, and now it's coming out. But to have holes, this must be done on purpose. Come on now. As a special prisoner, whatever he is, inmate in this Manhattan detention center, that has been known as a rat's nest for years. He has been put in a spot where he can. I am saying on purpose, there are holes in the floor so he can have access to women. This is disgusting. And how did the victims of all sex trafficking or abuse like this, exploitation, when they read things and hear things like this, what is going through their minds? They are disgusted, and they've all reported to me they don't expect this case to go anywhere. Somehow, some way, he's going to be cut loose, or somebody else is going to be taking the main fall for all of this. But I can't believe we even have to discuss. He's communicating, and I know it's a family show, Nancy, but, you know, things they're doing reportedly through these peepholes, I'm disgusted, and everybody else should be too. And let's call for what is going on here. We need some answers about this.
Normal thing in prison. It's not just P. Diddy shit. I mean, if because of celebrity there, you finna find out it's bosses in prison who living like kings. He's a boss of bosses. You finna find out cats with money got access to females, and the guards treat them different. And they get to, what you mean? They getting females pregnant in jail. Everybody clutching their pearls. Why, this is disgusting. I just can't believe what you don't know what's going on in jail. The man is in jail. That's what y'all want him, right? That's what y'all want him, because if he gets sentenced, shit, he gonna be like Pablo Escobar. Ever has their own prison. Unless y'all take them hundreds of millions of dollars from him, this is gonna continue to happen. The man gonna have it his motherfucking way, man. He see, the number one thing he was facing was attempts on his life. You see? Now that we know that his street people is paying people off and he running that jail, meaning he done, man, come on, man. Anything else, y'all just gonna be whining and crying about it.
Unacceptable.
I think what you're referring to is commonly called a, and I will not elaborate on that, but from what I understand, he has full and unfettered view of female inmates. And it sounds to me to high-profile lawyer Ariel Mitchell, who is representing many of the alleged victims connected to this case, as well as Courtney B. Ariel, it sounds to me like he is being rewarded. Sean Combs is being rewarded. Why should he get rewards as opposed to anybody else in MDC?
Well, unfortunately, that's the world we live in, where celebrities receive better treatment in all scenarios, even when they've committed crimes. So we need to ask ourselves as a society, why are we treating people differently just because they have status, just because they're a celebrity, just because they have money, especially somebody like Diddy, who has committed so many atrocities and so many crimes over the past 3 decades, spanning numerous, we don't even know how many victims that there really are. We're at hundreds of victims just right now that we know of. But of course, in our country, in our society, we reward and give people preferential treatment just because of who they are. And that's why he's being rewarded.
Back to Lynn Shaw of Lynn's Warriors, and you can hear her on YouTube at Lynn's Warriors. Lynn, I didn't hear your response to the fact that $500,000 worth of refurbishing a large area so Sean Combs could have floor to wall to ceiling mirrors during the freak-offs. Freak-off, what a euphemism. That's certainly putting perfume on the pig. According to prosecutors, what freak-offs really are drugging and intoxicating women, slipping drugs into their drinks, and more. So they have no idea what is happening around them while they are videoed being. That's what a freak-off is, according to prosecutors. And now we learn, I can't wait for a jury to hear this if it's true, that floor to wall to ceiling is mirrored at Sean Combs' request so he can see sex everywhere he looks.
I can't even believe, I'm going to just say it, Nancy, this old guy, I don't want to bring it up before, but we have heard such disgusting reports coming out of Manhattan Detention Center. We've got our sources here. I'm boots on the ground here in the middle of New York City. People tell me things. Listen, disgusting. And Ariel pegged it right away. Money talks, fame, even though all of these horrible alleged crimes, and I put that in air quotes here as I'm standing here, they should have nothing to do with this guy, yet that's what talks in our society. This is the morality going on today. There are probably thousands and thousands of victims, and I'm just going to say it. You're going to find out there were minors involved. That is my opinion. That's what I've heard. And how he can even be given mirrors and this and that and chicken sandwiches, whatever he's eating there, you know what? He should eat some bad tuna fish and have some food poisoning. That's what I have to say about this guy, because he is just dominating this whole story with his lawyer, and I'm tired of it. Let's talk about the victims. Let's talk about the abuse they endured. Let's get this case going and find out who else is involved. Why is he the only one in jail? He had accomplices. He had people booking flights and rooms and this and that, and women involved. There are always women involved with these pimps, traffickers, whatever we're calling.
Joining me now, high-profile lawyer Eric Faddis, trial lawyer, TV analyst, and partner at Varner Faddis Elite Legal, former felony prosecutor. Eric, thank you for joining us. Here is the reality, whether people like it or not. In our country, under our U.S. Constitution, you cannot be prosecuted for failure to act. If I stood by and watched you drown in the Mississippi River, I could not be prosecuted for that. I don't have a duty. Of course I would, Eric. I don't have a duty to jump in and try and save you. It's just that simple. So if there are celebrities, which I believe there were, at these parties, at some of the freak-offs, the fact that they did not intervene does not make them a criminal. And I also find it really suspicious that everybody's talking about celebrities, but nobody's naming any names. If you've got proof, fine, put up or shut up.
Yeah, Nancy, I hear you, and I would save you if you were drowning too. But yeah, in looking at this, I think there's going to be a lot of folks who are sort of not culpable participants. They were just observers. They were there, but they're caught up in this huge saga for which there is clearly a stigma, for which they may have a negative association going forward professionally and otherwise. And for some of these folks, that they frankly, this was completely unbeknownst to them. They didn't know what was happening, and they were simply at this party. Now, being at a raucous party is not in and of itself a crime. Now, if they had knowledge of some kind of misconduct and provided material aid, that is where we begin to cross the line between an innocent observer and a culpable participant.
In another resurfaced video, singer Machine Gun Kelly, or MGK, describes his wild Las Vegas New Year's Eve bender with Diddy when he was just 20 years old. MGK says Diddy escorted him to 9 clubs on New Year's Eve, paying for roughly 270 bottles to supply them and an entourage of women. Eventually, MGK tried to say his goodnights, but Diddy told him, "We're not going to sleep." The singer says the partying continued for more than 48 hours.
Real estate experts believe the tales of gigantic orgies and freak-offs at Sean Combs' LA mansion are scaring off potential buyers. The stunning 17,000 square foot property has reportedly attracted no serious offers despite being on the market for more than 60 days. The listing has an asking price of nearly $62 million, but experts say Combs' realtor may have to find a buyer that can look past the headlines, or the home will continue to languish on the market.
I wouldn't want to touch that place with a 10-foot pole. Ew. What family's going to want to move into Diddy's mansion? Everywhere you look, you can imagine a freak off and smeared baby oil laced with GHB. Okay. Apparently, nobody is touching Diddy's mansion. Wow. I wonder why. Straight out to crimeonline.com investigative reporter Sydney Sumner. Did I get those figures right? $62 million? And is that real?
Yeah, that's completely correct, Nancy. It's just under 62 million. It's about 61.3, I believe, is the listing price. And nobody is coming in touch with that home. Apparently, there's been reports that some overseas buyers have been looking into the home, but nothing serious. Nobody wants to move in there.
You know, a lot of times, Sydney, you and I have covered cases where after a crime, the whole place is just razed, it's just torn down. Maybe that's what they're going to have to do in this case. Hey, to you, Robert Crispin, this is your neck of the woods. Robert Crispin, private investigator at Crispin Special Investigations, former federal task force and DEA in Miami. You can find him at crispininvestigations.com. Robert, have you ever been in a strip club?
Worse.
Okay, let me clarify. Your Honor, let me refine my question. Have you ever been in a strip club in waking hours in the daylight?
Yes, many times.
I mean, all the magic is gone. I've been in many a strip club in waking hours to find witnesses. And when you look in there in the daylight, it is disgusting. It's filthy. There's like wads of hair, food. It
Really not
smells.
interested.
It is
Ouch.
disgusting. And that's just
And you know
what
what?
I can imagine his mansion is like.
Right. Dead everywhere. And that's why you don't want to sit on the couch. And knowing what went on inside there is nothing that I certainly want to purchase.
Okay, hold on just a moment. Hold on just a moment. To Lynn Shaw. Okay, Lynn, I know you have a very serious mission, which is ending exploitation of women and minors with Lynn's Warriors. But I really think what Crispin just unwittingly, I think, said sums up the sale of Diddy's home or the lack thereof. You don't want to sit on a couch.
You don't want to sit on a couch. Here's what we hear is going on. We hear that foreign buyers will purchase the property. They will ruin, they will knock down the place, raise the place, and it will just be a parcel of land that somebody will rebuild on. But you know what I want to do, Nancy? I want to purchase it myself in my dream world, my Lynn's Warriors, do an exorcism, a cleansing of all, build a beautiful big mansion and start putting in victims of sexual abuse, exploitation, and give them wraparound services and take this horrible, awful, unending story that has only just begun and turn it into something positive. Turn it around to provide for victims. That's what I want to do in my Warriors world, because this guy has gotten away with this for decades. And now,
okay, well, I got some
waiting to
bad
hear who's
news for you.
involved.
I hate to be the bearer of ill tidings, Lynn, but I imagine that the overseas buyers are going to beat you out. You're not going to get to turn this into some type of a home for victims. I don't know that they'd want to be there anyway. But that said, the attempted sale of Sean Combs's mansion is just another attempt to raise money. What else is he doing? And why does he need money so desperately? Listen.
Once estimated as a billionaire, Sean Combs' legal fees are leaving him strapped for cash. With his Los Angeles mansion failing to sell, Combs has turned to renting out his Gulfstream 550 on the flight share site Victor, dubbed the Uber of private jets. The $60 million distinctive black jet can accommodate up to 14 passengers. A chartered flight from NYC to LA costs a cool $100,000, while a longer flight, say from LA to London, runs upwards of $400,000.
And that's right. Sean Combs now renting out his $60 million private jet. To Sydney Sumner, what can you tell me?
Nancy, we know that this plane is available for charter on multiple websites. It's owned by Combs's Love Air LLC. We don't know how much money it's really making him, and it feels like a very desperate attempt to loosen up some more cash. We know that Combs's brand is very heavily tied to his public image, which is currently in the toilet. And he also burned bridges with his biggest income source, Diageo, that was the owner of his liquor companies, Ciroc and De Leon Tequila. So Combs really has no income coming in right now whatsoever. So this feels like a very desperate attempt to generate some cash, but he's also not using the plane. So it does kind of make sense.
All those private defense attorneys don't come cheap. I mean, straight back out to you, Faddis. I guarantee you these lawyers are charging, what, $500 to $1,000 an hour?
Oh, easy. Yeah, I think the total price tag on this thing is going to be multi-millions. That's just on the legal representation side.
And there's more. Listen.
Diddy may never regain the immense wealth he accumulated over his career. Many of Combs' income sources relied entirely on his personal brand. Ciroc and De Leon, Sean John, and Revolt TV, for example. With the current standing of Combs' public image, businesses and big-name brands will likely want nothing to do with him. While Combs recently released a new album, a world tour could be out of the question for 15 years to life.
In the last hours, we learned that Sean Puffy Combs is renting out his $60 million blacked out private jet. Who is renting this jet for $120,000 one way up to $400,000 for a round trip? Well, guess what? Since he has been behind bars, Sean Combs's jet has flown to French Polynesia, New Zealand, LA, and Mexico. To Dr. Bethany Marshall joining us out of Beverly Hills, psychoanalyst. Dr. Bethany, who is paying this kind of money to fly on Diddy's jet?
You know, Nancy, I hate to break it to you, but there are a lot of sex offenders in the general population and people who idealize sexual violence and who are very identified with it. And I am afraid somebody is going to come forward and buy that $62 million mansion because they will like the memories associated with it. And these are the type of people who want to be on that fancy jet. People who overlook violence, people who love violence, people who want to insert themselves into the notoriety of Sean Puffy Combs. Nancy, even the celebrities at those parties, this is not a homogeneous group. This is a group of people, they're all different, and they may have been unwittingly committing crimes themselves because they may have taken drugs, they may have been on ecstasy, they may have not really known what was happening and then slipped into an offending pattern themselves, and now they are frightened. So we have people on those jets that love P. Diddy, that want to be around him. There is often a glorification of sexual violence, and that is the undercurrent of this story, that sexual violence is prevalent.
Well, actually, Dr. Bethany, I think you may be right. Does anybody remember the Playboy Mansion? In 2016, the Playboy Mansion was bought by Darren Metropolis for $100 million. And you know, it wasn't worth $100 million. The buyer wanted to be attached to the image of the Playboy Mansion.
Nancy, you wouldn't believe in my Beverly Hills practice how many patients of mine talked about going to the Playboy Mansion, and they loved the idea. It made them feel like a celebrity. It made them feel special, and they glorified it. They did not put their thoughts together about women who were being treated as objects. It's like that went out of their mind. Same as Jeffrey Epstein's island. Look at all the people who went there. Philanthropists, billionaires, CEOs, attorneys. And that is because, Nancy, there is a prevailing attitude in our culture that it's okay to treat women as objects.
You know, we were talking earlier about no one buying Diddy's mansion. Lynn Shaw had an idea about what she wanted to do with the mansion. Refurbish it, clean it, number one, with a hose, but then have victims live in it, which is, you know, never going to happen, Bethany. Which is never going to happen, Lynn, because nonprofits like yourself could never afford it. Multimillionaires can. But I've got an idea. Straight back out to high-profile lawyer Eric Faddis joining us. Eric, the money from the sale of that mansion could be ordered to go to victims. But here's the rub, Faddis. He hasn't been convicted of anything. So any money from the sale of the mansion or the rental of the private jet, which, by the way, has had at least 30 trips in the last 2 months. Somebody's renting that thing for a lot of money. None of that money is going to go to alleged victims because there's not a conviction yet.
Yeah, right now, I mean, the money being generated is likely just for his legal team. Those bills have to be out of control. And on top of that, he doesn't have the same income coming in. He doesn't have these deals anymore that are giving him millions of dollars. Now, Nancy, as you know, some states do have civil forfeiture statutes. And if they could link either the property or the airplane with criminal activity, there's at least an argument that prosecutors could try to obtain some of those assets and convert them to some sort of beneficial use that is not paying Diddy's legal fees.
Think about it. This blacked out, fully customized jet that Diddy gifted to himself a couple of years ago was his pride and joy. He called it the Uber of private jets. Now it's a Gulfstream G550 that Combs referred to as Combs Air. He would use it to shoot his online content, while on board and allow celebrity guests to post videos inside, conveying an ultra luxurious lifestyle. Okay, that said, 30 trips in the last 2 months at least $100,000 one way. That's a lot of money. But right now, Sean Combs is trying to, quote, spread the image of love and good energy. Listen.
Yours, King Combs. And right now I'm taking over my pop's Instagram. We're gonna be posting videos by spreading, good energy and taking y'all down memory lane and all the positive things he did. So stay tuned and watch this. Let's go. We love you, Pops. Happy birthday.
And that is from Sean Combs' official Insta page. That is his son, King, still trying to support his dad, spreading the love and the good energy. If you know or think you know anything regarding a witness in the Sean Puffy Combs federal indictment,
A federal judge ruled one of Sean Diddy Combs' many accusers must disclose her identity, or else her case will be dismissed. So she complied with the judge's order and refiled her suit against the embattled music mogul using her real name. The ruling came down last month when a federal judge wrote in her ruling, there's a fundamental question as to whether the Jane Doe accuser has substantial privacy interest that outweighs the customary and constitutionally embedded presumption of openness in judicial proceedings. The judge said because Jane Doe filed her suit accusing a famous person of engaging in heinous conduct 20 years ago, the defendant has the right to defend themselves, and the people have a right to know who is using their court. The attorney who filed the suit on behalf of their client was Tony Busby, a high-powered Texas-based attorney who's brought a number of lawsuits against Combs since he's been behind bars in September. Busby at the time said he had a great respect for the court and its ruling. In a statement, he said, quote, our job as counsel for these victims is to protect their safety the best way we can, which is what we're trying to do by filing the cases anonymously. Anonymous or not, this case will proceed, period. The judge ruled Doe must file the lawsuit under her own name by November 13th, or the suit will be dismissed. And just a day before that deadline, the lawsuit was refiled. Now Jane Doe is plaintiff Candace McCrary. She alleges she received an invite to Combs' photo shoot in 2004 when she was 19 years old. According to the suit, she was flattered and excited to receive an invite from someone like Combs. So she went with her friend to the event and learned it was a photo shoot for DeBand, a music group Combs signed to his Bad Boy Entertainment label. According to the lawsuit, McCrary and her friend were then invited to an after party by Combs' business associates, but before the party, she met Combs during the photo shoot, and he allegedly told her and her friend to come to his hotel first for a more exclusive party. So they went and were taken to a Marriott hotel in Manhattan by a member of Combs' entourage. McCrary claims when she arrived to the hotel suite, at first she noticed about a dozen people there having drinks and listening to music in a relaxed party environment. But when she attempted to mingle with other party guests, McCrary and her friend were grabbed and taken to a separate room off from the main party. There's so much to unpack with the many lawsuits that involve Sean Diddy Combs, and part of the reason we're able to keep bringing you these stories is because of our great sponsors like Upside. You might be asking yourself, what's Upside? Well, it's a free app that gets you cash back on daily essentials like gas, groceries, and restaurants. Sometimes I only have time for a quick lunch break, but then there are times I can have a nice sit down at a restaurant and I can use Upside for both. Plus, I can use Upside to get cash back when I do. It's so easy and simple to use and completely free, so why not? And this is actual real cash back too. McCrary believed the man taking them was a security guard, so she went with him. But when she asked the unnamed man where they were going, he allegedly said, "You know what you are here for." Once McCrary and her friend got to the bedroom, the security guard left the room and locked the door, leaving the two alone in the room with Combs. McCrary alleges Combs gave her and her friend drinks and instructed them to take cocaine he had prepared on the coffee table. But McCrary says she didn't want to do the cocaine, and Combs gradually became more aggressive and eventually began forcibly touching them without consent. According to the suit, when they resisted, Combs ordered McCrary's friend to perform oral sex on him, or else he would have them both killed. McCrary says her friend complied as she begged the mogul to let them leave. He allegedly didn't, and Combs, according to the lawsuit, forced McCrary to take her clothes off. And once she was undressed, the mogul allegedly forced himself on her and began to sexually assault her. The suit claims Combs fondled, molested, and ultimately raped McCrary while she begged him to stop. McCrary says the door opened and the security guard from earlier rushed in to ask if everything was all right. When that happened, her friend rushed out of the door, but McCrary couldn't move because Combs was allegedly still on top of her. The suit says Combs got off of her to talk to the security guard and he left the room, but told her to stay put, otherwise she would be killed. The filing says after about half an hour of sitting in the dark room by herself, another security guard came and told her she could leave. So she got her things and left the hotel and called a taxi back to her dorm in downtown Brooklyn. Since his arrest in September, he's also pleaded not guilty to charges including sex trafficking, racketeering conspiracy, and transportation to engage in prostitution. His defense team is fighting to have him released on bail ahead of his high-profile trial. He's already been denied twice, but his team is seemingly hoping third time will be a charm. But until that hearing happens, he remains behind bars in a federal detention center in Brooklyn, New York. Let's bring on now criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor Safa Robinson Ferrer. Safa, always great to see you. I remember when the ruling came down that this Jane Doe had to refile her lawsuit under her real name. But are you surprised at all that she actually did?
I'm not surprised at all that she refiled the lawsuit here. You know, there's allegations of abuse. There have been continued allegations of abuse revolving around Mr. Combs. This is a high-profile case with a high-profile defendant. It appears, my guess would be that she's seeking monetary damages. And just like any other plaintiff in a lawsuit, here she is seeking what she feels that she is entitled to. And the only way for her to do it was to seek the court's permission to go under that Jane Doe status. But unfortunately, the court determined that now she has to publicize her real name. And so she went and did that. So not a surprise there.
Do you think it may have set a dangerous precedent to have a Jane Doe refile her suit under her real name? And what message do you think it sends, this ruling, for others who are seeking justice but wanted that anonymity to protect themselves?
Absolutely. You know, it's really difficult here, and there's a balancing test that's performed by the court. You know, first and foremost, anytime there's a lawsuit that's in federal court, according to the rules, the plaintiff is supposed to disclose their name, and the defendant's name is also disclosed in that lawsuit. Not only that, but there has to be special permission by an individual to seek that anonymity, you know, and part of the reason that happens is because these cases can be sensitive in nature. They allege sexual abuse. They allege other things that, you know, have been harmful or detrimental to a plaintiff, whether it be STDs or things of that nature that are very sensitive to any person. And so an individual who may have had this experience, of course, will want to protect their privacy rights, you know, in going forward with this litigation, but they want to seek some sort of justice. So I think it can scare off or set a dangerous precedent for plaintiffs as they decide to come forward. But there has to be a balancing between the plaintiff's privacy and the public interest in being aware of these lawsuits and what's going on.
Yeah, and I think, you know, everyone in America at this point especially knows who Sean Combs is, and whether they know him as Puffy, Diddy, or Love, whatever you may call him. But what are your thoughts on the judge saying during her ruling that plaintiff's interest to avoid public scrutiny or even embarrassment doesn't outweigh the interests of both Combs and the public? Do you think the public has a right to know who is using the courts?
You know, it's an interesting thing here because under the First Amendment, we have freedom of speech. You know, public or courtrooms are open to the public, and that is protected under that First Amendment, right? And so we as a public have a right to know what's being litigated in this country. And that's the reason for that, is so that the public can know and be aware, and that is certainly a First Amendment right. You know, again, there's the balancing with a person's privacy right. And I think that although you do have a right to confront and face your accusers, and that's the most important thing that's protected by the Fifth Amendment here, you know, there has to be, you know, a way that we can proceed with these certain issues without placing victims or potential victims or alleged plaintiffs in a detrimental position when it comes to public scrutiny. You know, again, this is a high profile case. The stakes are high here for Mr. Combs, and he's certainly entitled to confront his accuser. But also there's a level of, you know, sensitivity with these types of cases as well that should be protected.
Yeah, and I'm sure going, even though Combs is still behind bars right now, I'm sure still going against a powerful figure like him, even though he has had that fall from grace, essentially, can be very intimidating. In your opinion, what do you think it is like for the alleged victims in these cases to still be going against a powerful figure like Combs, even though we know now he's still behind bars? So what are your thoughts overall about people who do go against these powerful figures and these powerful celebrities?
I think in this case with Mr. Combs, I think there's power in numbers for these plaintiffs and for these alleged victims. There's one thing to have just one sole victim who may have difficulty speaking out. They don't want to be scrutinized. They, want people to believe them, or they don't want to have to deal with whether someone believes them or not, or is critical of what happened to them. But once Miss Ventura initially filed her lawsuit, and then we started seeing other lawsuits coming across the country, I think that there's a strength in numbers here with respect to, plaintiffs in these cases, and not only plaintiffs, but also victims, to say this happened to this person allegedly. Well, this also happened to me too. And now we can kind of form some or find some type of solidarity within one another as we proceed forward, because this happened to me too.
Yeah, and going back to the allegations themselves, the lawsuit does read very similar to a lot of the other civil lawsuits Combs still faces. Candace McCrary, she alleges she met Combs when she was 19. He would allegedly raped her in a hotel room and forced her friend to perform oral sex on him, or else he would have both of them killed. What do you make of the allegations overall? And as the federal government alleges a pattern, do you think that the suits that have been filed since his arrest continue to give weight to the government's case?
I think the civil suits in this case definitely echo what's going on in federal court. The federal government's case against Mr. Combs basically says, or is alleging, that Mr. Combs participated in a pattern of activity that included force, threats of physical force to get people to engage in sexual activity, holding individuals against their will, and things of that nature. And these civil suits echo that pattern. They're essentially alleging also that these women, or these men and women, were held under the threat of force or physical violence to perform sexual acts with respect to Mr. Combs and his parties and freak offs and those sorts of things. So they back up what the federal prosecutors are alleging against Mr. Combs here. And I think that bolsters what their allegations are.
Yeah, and of course, Diddy, through his attorneys, have denied all the allegations against him. But do you think that Diddy's attorneys are surprised that McCrary did refile her lawsuit? I'm sure for them it was a win that the judge had ruled that the Jane Doe at the time that we know needed to refile her suit using her real name. But do you think it came as a shock to even his team that she actually did?
I don't think it would have come as a shock to his team. I think that, a part of the reason why these suits are filed on behalf of plaintiffs is because they are seeking justice in their eyes, but they're also seeking some sort of monetary compensation. And considering that, and I'm going to make an assumption, the plaintiff in this case, her seeking of monetary damages outweighed the idea that she wanted to remain anonymous in this case. And as a defense attorney, I don't think that's surprising, specifically if somebody wants monetary damages. And if the only way to do it is to disclose who they are or their identity, then it's not a surprise. And it wouldn't be a surprise to me either.
Yeah, and with all these civil suits kind of sitting on the back burner right now because of Combs' sex trafficking case, do you see a point where they are ever litigated to the full extent, given that, there's so many at this point?
It's going to be interesting to see how this goes. The federal prosecution is going to take a front seat to all of the actions that are pending against Mr. Combs. And so that's the highest priority right now for his defense team and for Mr. Combs and for the courts. He's got a right to a fair trial. He's got a right to a speedy trial. Not only that, but that's going to, like I said, take the first seat. The civil suits sit and will, at some point be litigated. And a lot of times with civil suits such as this, they end up going to mediation. They end up being settled. So the likelihood that those cases will see trial will be determined in the future, but more likely than not, I think they're going to ultimately end up in some sort of settlement if it gets there.
And of course, we'll continue to follow this, see how this all continues to play out. Safa, I want to thank you so much, as always, for your time and your insight into this case. Before we sign you off, I am going to ask you a final question. Diddy is hoping to be released on bail and has a hearing next week to discuss it. Do you think third time's going to be the charm for him?
You know, I think Mr. Combs is going to sit in custody pending the trial. I don't think the third time is going to be the charm. Unfortunately, I think there have been too many red flags that have been raised to the judge. And so one of the things that the judge determines is whether or not the individual is a risk of flight. The second thing that they determine is if the individual is a threat to the community. And although he surrendered his passport, he still would be at risk of being a threat to the community. There's witness tampering and all of those sorts of things. So in the abundance of caution, I think that the judges have essentially said, Mr. Combs, unfortunately, you're going to sit here until we can get through this litigation, considering that there have been allegations of witness tampering and threats and things like that.
All right. And again, we'll continue to follow this to see how this outcome comes. Again, Safa, thank you so much for your time. Always appreciated.
Thank you.
In fact, Mark Agnifilo says, the government is in possession of written material that is absolutely privileged. Now, unfortunately for Mark Agnifilo, is his credibility, in my opinion, is a little bit shot. Hello, everybody. How are you doing this fine Monday, if that's the day you're watching it? Well, if you watched my most recent video, you did see that I added on at the very end there a major update. And that is that now Mark Agnifilo with, representing Diddy, they're both claiming that the government is in unlawful possession of Diddy's privileged information. Now, Diddy has until Wednesday to respond to the government's response to his motion for bail. So Diddy asked to get out on bail again. It's the second time he's asked. He claimed he had all this new information. And the government just responded back and said, no, actually, Diddy did not have a bunch of new information. All the information was exactly the same information. He's just trying to argue the same crap all over again. Whew. Well, if you watched my most recent video, then you did see that I said it in that video. I said, y'all, they are telling us that Diddy is learning at this literally same time as the public that the government is in possession of his phone call records.
So the government's saying, look, Your Honor, there's nothing new that he's arguing. And in fact, we have some new information of our own. I guess now is a good time to let you know, Your Honor, that we actually are in possession of some of, if not all of Diddy's prison calls. Yeah, we didn't tell Diddy that. Boom. So like Friday night at midnight, Diddy ends up finding out that the government has been receiving his calls, which does raise issues, right? Like,
not only are they in possession of his phone call records, but they're also in possession of some notes that they, whenever Diddy was complaining about being locked up or whatever, and he was like, I can't even get my trial preparation done because they're doing all of these raids all the time. They're coming through, rifling through, ruffling through my stuff, taking my notes, taking my notebooks, taking my pens and pencils. I can't even have a pen. He was complaining about all that, right? Well, the government did just 2-3 days ago come out just 3 days ago, filing. Yes, they are in possession. The feds are in possession of Diddy's private notes. Okay. So here is the letter sent literally today by Mark Agnifilo to the court. And he says, Your Honor, defense counsel, that's him, Mark Agnifilo, has recently learned that the prosecutors are in possession of attorney-client privileged material, including the defendant's own written notes. That means Diddy, including Diddy's own written notes, Mark Agnifilo is saying. He goes on, this search and seizure are in violation of Diddy's 4th, 5th, and 6th Amendment rights. Moreover, the targeted seizure of a pre-trial detainee's work product and privileged materials created in preparation for trial is outrageous government conduct, amounting to a substantive due process violation. Now, this is
huge, because substantive due process violation is another way to say mistrial. And this is freaking why y'all like to fuss at me. You like to get so up in arms at me because I've been saying we need to make sure that the trial process is actually fair. Because if it isn't, then people, namely in this particular situation, Diddy, Sean P. Diddy, Puff Daddy Combs, can get off and never be prosecuted for this stuff, y'all. It's very important that everyone has a fair trial. Does everyone have a fair trial? No, I don't believe they do. But the solution for that is not to be cheering and arfing like seals whenever some not fair stuff happens. And you know what? I've been saying it. I've been getting a little bit of a message from the mothership that if I was in Diddy's situation, and I promise you, if you were in Diddy's situation, the issue is we, if I'm talking to you, you know who you are, wouldn't ever do the activities that Diddy is accused of. I wouldn't. The ones he's accused of, right? I wouldn't do those activities. But the reality, I'm so sorry if it's just more convenient for y'all to have cognitive dissonance than accept the reality. But the reality is people can and do sometimes, from time to time, state things on the record that are not true. Sometimes it's on purpose. Sometimes it's because they misremembered. Sometimes it's because they had a freaking memory implanted or something. Girl, I mean, I really don't know. Okay. But I felt like it was a little bit of a bridge too far that they're not letting Diddy have a pen and a notebook, and they were taking his private notes. And not only that, y'all, they took those notes and turned them over to the prosecutors. They gave them to the prosecutors. Okay. So now what Mark Agnifilo is arguing is that was absolutely outrageous. And the fact that the prosecutors even have possession of this evidence is enough for a mistrial. I'm not sure I'm willing to go that far. I'm not sure. While I do support due process rights, I don't support Mark Agnifilo getting all the way ass carried away. Okay. And I'll tell you why I'm saying that as we work down the letter. I mean, the letter's only a page and a half. It's really not long. Mark Agnifilo says, because the prosecutors are currently in possession of privileged material and are actively using the material to detain the defendant, the defense requests an immediate evidentiary hearing. That's where he wants to come forth and ask some questions. Means Diddy and his lawyer are requesting to have a mini trial about this issue. This is an emergent matter, meaning it's an emergency, because the government has Diddy's privileged notes to his lawyers. Y'all, it really does seem egregious. Like, the government did admit that they had it. Like, I don't know how it works. Actually, I would love it if Emily D. Baker I don't know if she's Emily D. Baker. Hey, hi, shout out. Somebody, if y'all could, somebody put a timestamp here for her, because she knows about the specifics about stuff like this. And I would love to know, because I don't know. Is this the ordinary course of trial production in a case like this? Like, for example, what happened in this case where they do a quote unquote regularly scheduled prison or jail sweep, and then some materials are confiscated during the sweep. So Diddy had notes taken, and I think they took his pens and maybe other stuff.
You can never, ever seize legal documents. Never.
So they take those notes, the Bureau of Prisons, and then they pass the notes over to the prosecutors. Is this ordinary course of business type of stuff? Or should the prosecutors have, at the very least, first notified Diddy and his counsel about the fact that they had these materials in their possession? Is there an exigent circumstances thing? Because this is what they say. I'll pull up what they actually said. Okay, this is the footnote in question. They said, with respect to materials received from the Bureau of Prisons that included possibly privileged materials, such as notes recovered from Diddy's cell, it says the prosecution team only accessed those materials after they had been reviewed by the filter team. So what is this? Is this just like the normal way of how I don't know how it should have been done. This might be how it's always done. But I'm just going to tell y'all, just like the gut check, the lay person, not expert, because I really don't have any special knowledge about this procedural, process or whatever. What is the process? Because in my gut check, it feels like before Diddy and his lawyer learned about this in a public filing at the exact same time as like Tom, Dick, and Harry, you and me, it feels like they probably should have had to lodge that evidence in a file, or somebody who knows how this works, please comment below. I'm just a little bit unequipped to talk about that particular issue, but let's get back to this letter. So Mark quotes that thing that we just read. It says, the government's opposition to Diddy's bail motion states that the trial prosecutors are in possession of possibly privileged materials, such as the notes recovered from Diddy's cell. In fact, Mark Agnifilo says, the government is in possession of written material that is absolutely privileged. Now, unfortunately for Mark Agnifilo, is his credibility, in my opinion, is a little bit shot, because he said so unequivocally back in September, my client did not have contact with a grand jury witness. He has more sense than to do that and all that, right? Well, come to find out, according to the government, Diddy did have contact with a grand jury witness after the guy was subpoenaed. I don't know what's true and I don't know what's not, because I wasn't there. But Mark Agnifilo is saying it is absolutely privileged material and they should not have it. Mark says this is a matter of grave concern that most respectfully must be addressed immediately, for the following reasons. First, there's no dispute that the government is in possession of privileged material. Second, until receiving the government's submission at 11:29 p.m., 11:30 at night on a Friday night, Mark Agnifilo, and I said this in my most recent video that just came out. I was like, y'all, the Mark Agnifilo found out on a Friday night. I said this.
So the government's saying, I guess now's a good time to let you know, Your Honor, that we actually are in possession of Diddy's prison calls. Yeah, we didn't tell Diddy that. Boom. So like Friday night at midnight, Diddy ends up finding out that the government has been receiving his calls.
And he's saying, yep, that's what's happened. Yep. The defense had never been told that Diddy's notes were even taken from his cell, that the notes were given to the U.S. Attorney's Office, nor that these notes were then given to the trial prosecutors in this case, who then used this material in a filing to keep Diddy detained. It does seem a little bit opposed to due process. And I'm speaking about like the actual due process. I don't care what your opinion is. I'm not talking about, let's argue about your opinion. Of course you're entitled to your opinion. And if enough people share your opinion, y'all can go out there and change the Constitution. But right now, it does appear to, at the very least, implicate Diddy's 4th, 5th, and 6th Amendment rights. It does. I'm sorry, it does. Again, I'm looking forward to hopefully, a person who worked as a trial attorney for a lot of years, hopefully Emily DeBaker, somebody else, if not her, talks about because this might be ordinary course of business, just how it goes. And he's getting his panties in a wad for no reason. I would like to know. I'm talking about how it works under the law and under the procedural rules. Okay. So Mark Agnifilo says, we request, that's him and Diddy, an immediate hearing at which the government shall provide answers to the following questions. So he wants to ask the following 6 questions to the government. Number 1, first, who authorized a search of Diddy's sleeping area, personal effects, and paperwork? Okay, who authorized the search? I remember reading in the government's papers that it was a pre-planned sweep and it was just there's no authorization, just pre-planned, but I don't know how any of this stuff works. So I'm just kind of like reading it along and reacting and commenting. Second question Mark Agnifilo wants to ask, who determined what paperwork to take out of Diddy's cell? That's a good question. I will say Mark Agnifilo might end up putting his foot in his mouth over this, because if they want to go into an evidentiary hearing on this whole thing, then the notes are going to come up at issue, and there might be stuff in them notes they don't want out right now to the public. You see what I'm saying? Third question Mark wants to ask, who decided to give the paperwork from the Bureau of Prisons to the feds, to the prosecutors? He also wants to ask the government, who decided to give to give these to the, okay, so the first, okay. Third, who decided to give this paperwork to the United States Attorney's Office in general, like the whole office at all? And then the next question he wants to know is, and then after that, who over there decided to give it to the prosecutors who are prosecuting this case? So he seems to be taking issue with all of those decisions. The decision from the Bureau of Prisons to pass it over to the United States Attorney's Office, the decision of the United States Attorney's Office to then pass it over to the prosecutors specifically on this case. He's taking issue with all those steps. Fifth, he says he wants to know who made the decision to not tell, not to disclose this information to Diddy's lawyer, that the prosecutors, that the U.S. Attorney's Office was in possession of his notes, including possibly privileged materials, until after the government put them in a filing, public filing, to keep him incarcerated. Now, I will say the public filing that we have, it is redacted. It is not a full public filing that they all have access to.
One second.
Going back to this situation.
Police are questioning entertainers Sean Puffy Combs and Jennifer Lopez following a shooting at a nightclub.
I had nothing to do with a shooting in this club.
Puff couldn't handle going to jail. Every man for himself.
Puffy got acquitted and he got 10 years.
He was betrayed.
I was absolutely set up to be the fall guy.
Welcome back. That was a clip from the explosive documentary, The Honorable Shine, coming out on Hulu on November 18th. We are back with Moses Shine Barrow, who served nearly 9 years in prison, stemming from that infamous nightclub shooting that changed his life forever. His co-defendant, Sean Combs, was acquitted of all charges. This is an exclusive conversation. That point really stuck out. I never heard you say it.
Yeah.
That you were the fall guy.
Well, that's the interesting thing. I believe that, the power of Diddy, the entertainer, the person that dominated pop culture, was so loud for so long that no one heard myself and my mom and my supporters when we were crying about our lives being destroyed and devastated by Diddy. You look at that, that's one of my first magazine covers, well, probably my second or my third.
It says hip hop's most wanted.
And they really didn't mean that I was on the run. They meant that everybody wanted to sign me. So it was like a double entendre.
It was, but then it became. So this is when everyone wanted you.
I was already incarcerated, and they were offering me millions of dollars.
Which you talk about I didn't know that you're incarcerated, Rikers Island, and there's a bidding war because, as one of the people, I think Nori said in the documentary, that
you now had this alleged shooting, this criminal case, and it made you to the music industry authentic, that the industry was looking for
well,
that.
I think Nori was talking about the bidding war that took place before I actually signed my first record deal. And then after all of the tragedies befell me and I was incarcerated, I had another pandemonium that took place in the music industry, and Jay-Z was coming to see me in his Maybach on Rikers Island, and Dr. Dre was calling me to sign. So I've been very fortunate to have people after me. But if you read this interview, which came out in, I think, 2001 or 2004. No, I think that's 2004. That's a 2004 interview. But this interview and the interview in 2001, I always said, you know, that Diddy snitched on me, that he threw me under the bus, and that I was a sacrificial lamb. But, you know, that's 26 years ago.
26 years ago.
So people don't remember, and I have moved on. So you asked why. This is more of a celebration than, you know, dancing on Diddy's grave or wanting to even connect myself
in the documentary,
to him.
In the documentary, you use this story, and I thought it was beautiful, about a baby turtle. You see the turtle on the sand, and it's hatched and it's trying to get to the ocean. And if you pick it up, it drowns because its legs aren't strong enough to swim. And you talk about so much of your life, you needed to build up your strength so that you wouldn't drown. Going back to this situation with Sean Combs, you're on the show with me, 2021. I turn on the BET Awards. You're performing with Sean Combs. I said, he's doing a power move, because then I saw the flag of Belize come down.
Right.
And I said, this is not about Bad Boy. This is about him showing the world.
It's about Belize.
But then there's a clip of Sean Combs calling you his brother. And people are questioning the relationship.
I wish I was his brother in 2000 when we were on trial. You know, I wish I was his brother for the last, 26 years, when, my mom, who is here with me, never got any assistance. He never helped to dry her tears.
Why did you agree to go on with him at the BET?
Because I moved on. So you don't live in those spaces. The documentary was very, the documentary was very emotionally draining. But part of what I owe to your audience, which is like one of the most lit, is that what the young people say? the most lit.
He said the audience. I said they came because they want to hear you.
You guys are incredible.
They're incredible.
This is like I've done Madison Square Garden, Nassau Coliseum, BET. To walk out is incredible. You guys had me.
Because I think one of the things about my audience, the Tampa, they want to know the truth. They play no games.
And that's why the documentary had to take me back to those places. Because you can't tell the story. You can't say, hey, Shine is the next Prime Minister of Belize. He's the opposition leader of the House of Representatives in Belize, and he's done this great turnaround, without showing all of the failures, without showing all of the torture, without showing all of the pitfalls. You have to show everything.
So you were in Belize, and the news broke of this video involving Sean Combs' ex-girlfriend, Cassie Ventura. She'd filed a lawsuit, an explosive lawsuit. The world started to hear these details. At the time you posted on your social media, I vehemently denounced the repugnant behavior of Sean Combs. I want absolutely nothing to do with the people who engage in this pattern of diabolical behavior. My prayers are with Cassie and all of the victims. And then there was a federal lawsuit that was filed by a producer who claimed that Sean Combs had gone around bragging about bribing witnesses and jurors. The victim that night at the nightclub shooting, Natanya Rubin, has always said it was Sean Combs who shot her. You have always said you were innocent.
Yes.
You have never said Sean Combs fired the gun. Why?
Well, I didn't see him fire the gun, and I'm not going to lie. Certainly, even if I don't believe in getting my friends in trouble, but at this point, I'm not going to make up anything to sensationalize my narrative, because I don't feel I need to do that. If Diddy was not in, if Diddy was not incarcerated right now, my story would still be incredible.
Yeah, it is.
Right? The entire intent of the documentary was to celebrate life. And the problem I think some of us as human beings have is we want sunshine without rain. You know, we don't appreciate the perfection of balance, right? You see, they say absence makes the heart grow fonder. That's balance, and that's what we need in our lives. And so the complexity of evolution is going through all these different spots and then getting to the point where I'm at right now, where I don't hate anyone. I don't blame anyone. No, I don't feel any joy. You know, I go to Brooklyn every day to use the mikveh. And I don't feel happy like, oh, you know, Diddy's in federal custody. You know, yeah. I prefer God to make me a multi-billionaire and grow the GDP. Grow the GDP of Belize to 100 billion and allow me to do amazing things for the people in Belize as the next prime minister. That's my karma. That's what I pray to God for. Someone's failure could never, ever, ever make me succeed. Yeah.
Sean Combs has always maintained his innocence in the nightclub shooting. We reached out to Sean Combs' lawyer for a statement, did not hear back, but you did hear from him. He called you in the documentary. At some point, you say, after the lawsuits were filed, he reached out to you to, and I'm paraphrasing here, make sure you were on the same page.
Yeah.
What did that mean?
Well, just back to the BET Awards, that was a legacy moment. And I'm a professional. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't want to do it. But he said, listen, this is about Belize, you know. Imagine this platform, the stage that you're going to have. And it's so true. It was about Belize. It was about the legacy of hip hop, because what we don't want to do is we don't want to tear down hip hop and its contributions to this planet. So everybody makes mistakes. The justice system is going to determine who is innocent and who is guilty, and may the victims get justice. And if people are innocent, may they get justice. So I can't live my life in a hindsight of, well, had I known the things that were happening around this individual, because I was incarcerated for 10 years. Then I was deported for another 13 years. So I had nothing to do with Sean Combs' life other than what he did to me, which is when I said he destroyed my life. So of course, going to one of the biggest award show, and the only term of agreement was that it had to be about Belize. And as you saw, that flag, listen, there are people in Belize that hate me because of politics. And they said, man, you know what? For that moment, we loved you. So that was very important. Now, as far as when Diddy got, I don't even think it was an indictment. It was when the video came out. When the video came out
of the abuse
with
of
Cassie and everything, and they asked me about him, you know, they try to make it seem as if like he and I had this fairy tale brotherhood and he was there for me. And I keep having to put it into context without spitting on someone's grave, that, you know, this is the person that destroyed my life. You hear my mom, she probably start crying when she comes on this couch, because when people ask, do you think that he did those things? Well, I know what he did to my family. And so the potential is there. As I said, he was just such a master of PR that he is so loud that people never hear the victims. So when the victim in this case, when it was clear what happened, I have a responsibility to Belize. I have a responsibility to my daughter. I have a responsibility to all the women in my life and all of the men as well, and people that look up to me to condemn things that are not acceptable. And even if you're my brother, I have to tell you when you're wrong. Even if we're friends, I have to tell you when you're wrong. And so when he called me, and then also at this time, the Little Rod suit came out, where he was allegedly bragging that, you know, he shot up the club and he made me take the fall, which, again, I didn't see him shooting, but it's not unbelievable, right? I was focused on trying to defend myself. So when that happened, that triggered me. So I moved on and I healed. But when you hear someone, high or on drugs or whatever state of mind they were in to be bragging about shooting up a club and having someone else take the fall, I know that to be true partially. I didn't see him shooting, but I know he made me take the fall. I know that he called witnesses to testify against me. We sat here and I said, please don't call that witness. That witness is going to destroy me and the witness is lying. So I had to tell that truth when the media and Belize asked me about it. This is one of the first interviews I'm doing outside of Belize. And as the opposition leader of Belize, I have to be transparent. I have to be accessible to the media. And there's always this one sensationalist journalist, his name is Jules Vasquez. He hates all politicians and asks the worst questions. So while I'm talking about the state of the nation, he'll ask me about Diddy.
So this is why you've had to.
That's why you see those sound bites, because I don't care to talk about them. I care about public policy, public administration, healthcare, citizen security, education.
So let me ask you.
But in that call, I had to tell him, I said, listen, when you know that we haven't been all good. You know that there was a point where I hated you and I thought that you were the devil. But, we moved on and I healed and I embraced you in the name of Belize, in the name of healing. But when I hear this gentleman saying that you're bragging about shooting up the club and having me take the fall, and then people get arrested based on the testimony that this gentleman gave in his litigation, it triggered me.
That's what I was getting to.
Yeah.
I knew it had to.
Yeah.
You've moved on. You're in this high place. You have a beautiful daughter, a family, your mother. And then this lawsuit comes out and you hear that this person allegedly was bragging. It would trigger anyone.
Yeah.
But what is remarkable about you is that even in that moment, you have reset.
We've got the feds raiding Diddy's cell at the Brooklyn jail to seize personal notes.
Salute.
We've got Diddy performing bird sacrifice before the Shine shooting verdict, bodyguard claims. And we've got Diddy accused of using other prisoners' phones to obstruct justice by US prosecutors. And wherever you're in the world watching this, thank you for joining. Thank you for joining the chat. The hearing for Jonathan Oddy, I've not checked into that, how it went yet, but I will certainly do so. All right, so we'll start out with the feds raiding Diddy's cell at the Brooklyn jail to seize personal notes. Personal notes, handwritten notes to his legal team, actually. So prosecutors are in possession of attorney-client privileged material that was seized from his cell at the MDC in Brooklyn, according to court documents obtained by TMZ. Defense attorney Mark Agnifilo claimed the privileged material includes Diddy's handwritten notes to his legal team concerning defense witnesses and defense strategies for his upcoming trial. Oh, this is the kind of thing they're going to try and parlay into saying that he can't have a fair trial now, it's prejudiced his trial now, or they're going to try and use this to weasel around something. He said the feds admitted to possessing the notes and that the seizure violates Diddy's 4th, 5th, and 6th Amendment rights. This search and seizure are in violation of Mr. Combs's constitutional rights, Agnifilo said in documents. The targeted seizure of a pretrial detainee's work product and privileged materials created in preparation for trial is outrageous government conduct, amounting to a substantive due process violation. This is a matter of grave concern that, most respectfully, must be addressed immediately, because the U.S. Attorney and it seems the trial prosecutors are currently in possession of privileged materials. We request a full evidentiary hearing as soon as the court can accommodate us. Look, when you're in jail, you've got nothing coming. That is a saying by the guards. And basically, they will stormtroop into your cell at any time of the day, scream at you to get your hands above your head and face the wall, strip you naked, tell you to squat, spread them, cough, and they're looking right in there. Then they throw you out of the cell in your boxer shorts, and they trash your cell. If there's pictures of your partner, wife, girlfriend, they throw them on the floor and they stomp on them, and they get all your bedding and they throw it on the floor and stomp on it. And they go through everything because they justify it, saying that you could have hidden illegal substances, contraband in there. So the fact that they've gone in his cell and seized some of his written notes is no surprise to me, because it happens all the time. But these lawyers are trying to parlay that into violations, due process violations. So there'll be an evidentiary hearing now, and the judge will make a decision. I don't think it's going to get kicked out on this. So put a 1 in the chat if you think Diddy's case could get kicked out for things like this. Put a 2 in the chat if there's no way is his case going to get kicked out. He's going down. We've got some 1s coming in, 2s. Mostly 2s, I see. All right. So the prosecution accused Diddy of obstructing his case from behind bars by paying off witnesses and enlisting his kids in a public relations campaign. We covered that one 2 days ago. They claim that he tried to influence potential jurors in his trial by getting 7 of his kids to post a video marking his birthday on November the 4th. Yeah, we already covered all that one. All right, let's go over to the animal sacrifice performed by Diddy. Bird sacrifice, actually. This has just come out this evening in the UK, in The Independent. Sean Diddy Combs performed bird sacrifice before the Shine shooting verdict, bodyguard claims. He performed the sacrifice hours before he was acquitted on all charges. Well, we know Natanya's got plenty to say about this case. He was standing trial alongside rapper Shine, now known as Moses Barrow, after the shooting at the Manhattan nightclub, New York, left 3 bystanders injured, including Natanya, who has serious allegations against J-Lo, and she's seeking justice. And she's one of the most powerful speakers we've ever had on the channel. So in the new Hulu documentary, The Honorable Shine, Diddy's former bodyguard, Jane Doe, claims that while Diddy was on his way to learn the verdict in the trial, he stopped in New York Central Park. Doe saw Diddy drop to his knees in front of another man. What? Before smoke swirled around him. Doe believes the smokes have been caused by burning sage. Sounds like more of the black magic Jane Doe talked about in previous videos, where they were trying to debase people's root chakras by savaging the posterior. Doe says he saw the man holding a Bible while praying and laying his hands on Combs. He then told Combs to remove a white bird from a cage. After Diddy threw the animal into the earth, it dropped to the ground dead. Wow. Only hours later, Diddy learned he had been acquitted of all charges. Barrow, meanwhile, was convicted of assault and reckless endangerment and went on to spend 9 years in max security and was paid $1 million and was still one of the shooters, according to Netanya. He wasn't completely innocent, but it seems like he took the rap for all of it. So the Independent approached Diddy's representatives for comment. Earlier this year, Barrow gave an interview in his home country of Belize, where he is now a politician and leader of the opposition, in which he said that Diddy had destroyed his life. Well, Netanya says that Barrow is not a saint, and his life, he was in the mix, shooting people in the nightclub. Not Netanya, but somebody else. He told Channel 5 News, when I was an 18-year-old kid just wanting to do nothing other than make my mother proud and make Belize proud and do what all of us want to do, be recognized for our talent and take over the world, I was defending him. And he turned around and called witnesses to testify against me. He pretty much sent me to prison. That is the context by which you must always describe that relationship. Yes, I forgave, I moved on, but let us not pretend as if I was in Miami for Thanksgiving and Christmas. Let us not lose sight of what the cold, hard facts are. This is not someone who I vacationed with and who he and I enjoyed this great intimate relationship of brotherhood. This is someone who destroyed my life and who I forgave and who I moved on, and for the better interest of Belize, because he was in a position at the time to give scholarships and to maybe invest. I would not deny attempting to bring the investment to Belize and contribution to education to Belize. Referring to his recent arrest, Barrow added, do I take any joy with what he is going through? Absolutely not. I am different than other people. No one needs to fail for me to succeed. Good philosophy at the end there, but still sounds a bit sour grapes even after he took the mill. All right. This one came out today as well in the Daily Record UK, saying that Diddy is accused of using other prisoners' phones to obstruct justice by US prosecutors. Court papers alleging, thanks for the super chat, Browning girl. Cheers. Usually the chat's going so fast, I can't even read them or keep up with them. And I know loads of super chats come in and I never even get to acknowledge them, and I feel bad afterwards. All right, so court papers allege that Diddy has been trying to evade government monitoring of phone calls from behind bars by seeking to arrange three-way phone calls and to buy the use of other inmates' phone privileges. So when I was inside on my ecstasy importation case, you have a jailhouse number and you put that into the phone, your jailhouse number, and that links it to your allowance. So I don't know exactly how it works in the feds. We'll have to ask Tommy. Tommy's back on Thursday. He's doing weekly shows on the channel now. But they're saying somehow he's buying up his allowances. I was buying other people's library books allowances. I think you're allowed 5 books in Sheriff Joe Arpaio's jail. You had to fill a form out. You couldn't request specific books. You had to put category. So I would put history, philosophy, psychology. And I didn't even know about this system. I was almost a year inside before I even became aware you could get books from the library and you could barter for other inmates' library allowances. I've been missing out on that for almost the first year. But once I put it into effect, believe me, I was trading off my little items of commissary ramen noodle soups, brownies. Brownies 10 years past their sell-by dates.
Trafficking trade, man. It's normal life.
To get as much brain food as I could. And that was the beginning of the reading marathon, whereby I managed to read over 1,000 books in just under 6 years. Wrote to my sister that in 2006 I read 268 books. She was like, "You lucky beep. People have jobs, lives, responsibilities, families. No one else could read that much unless they were like a mad monk in a cave," which I did feel like at one point, totally detached from everything. And I got a strange sense of elation after they'd confiscated everything. Painful at first, but then elation. All right, so more onto the story. The defendant has demonstrated an uncanny ability to get others to do his bidding. Employees, family members, and MDC inmates alike, prosecutors wrote. The defendant has shown repeatedly, even while in custody, that he will flagrantly and repeatedly flout rules in order to improperly impact the outcome of his case. The defendant has shown, in other words, that he cannot be trusted to abide by rules or conditions. Prosecutors stated in partially redacted papers. Details of the recipients and substance of the phone calls were redacted in the court documents. The calls were generated using other inmates' privileges, were not identified as being directed at witnesses, but prosecutors said there were evidence of Combs' disregard for the jail's regulations and were part of what they described as obstruction efforts. This comes a week before another hearing about the bail, and his lawyers have said that if granted bail, their client would be put under extremely restricted conditions with no access to a phone or internet. Yeah, right. Tell us another one, Pinocchio. And would abide by limitations on whom he contacts. Yeah, he'll be using carrier pigeons. Or maybe sacrificing carrier pigeons. All right, so Kim Kardashian's ex. When's this one from? 30. Oh, yeah, we already did that one. All right, guys, it is late here in the UK. But I'm going to tell you what we've got coming up. We have
Coffee. Follow me.